From the home of the Yard of Bricks, one of the most historic tracks on the circuit, we welcome you to Indianapolis Motor Speedway as it plays host to the biggest race of the season for the Dark Horse Racing Series presented by Troy Lee Designs. Here this evening, it's the Dark Horse 500 presented by Troy Lee Designs as these drivers today prepare themselves for 200 laps in what is normally the season finale, but today will be the penultimate race of the season. It's our final stop for the double points races as well, and very well, like in seasons past, could be the venue where the championship is decided. I'm Seth Cole, and I will be joined soon by broadcast colleague Matthew Rodriguez here to bring you coverage of today's action as drivers are getting ready to roll out, get ready for 3 pace laps, and then prepare themselves for the 200 lapper. 3 former winners of this event are in the field here today, including the driver that lines up on the pole position. That will be Craig Forsythe in the number 27. He won this event back in Season 2 after a 3-wide run down the front straightaway. A caution came out, finished the race under yellow, and he was able to put his name in the record books as a winner of the Dark Horse 500. He was joined a season later by Matt Wagner, who is piloting the number 6, will be rolling off from the inside of row number 2 on the starting grid. And of course, the defending winner of this Indianapolis 500, looking for back-to-back wins. That is Nick Degroot, who's going to be rolling off on the outside of row number 1. All 3 of our former winners of this Dark Horse 500, I got to get used to saying that, they are going to be rolling off from 3 of the top 4 positions. Henry Bennett, who came up runner-up here in the Dark Horse 500, he is going to be rolling off from the 2nd position. These drivers are going to prepare for 3 pace laps here. We will see them formulate from the usual double file to 3 wide, and they will actually be 3 wide for the start of this race. There were a total of 29 drivers, I believe it was, that qualified for this race. Looks like a few of them did not make the start here today, but we're going to give you the starting lineup based off of where everyone qualified during poll day qualifying this past Wednesday night. Craig Forsythe will be on the inside of row number 1. Henry Bennett will be in the middle of row 1 with Matt Wagner on the outside. Row 2 is going to be comprised of Nick Degroot on the inside, Charles Teed in the middle, and Jeff Highsong on the outside. Eric Peterson will be on the inside of row 3 alongside of Joseph Morales and Gail Brooks. Row 4 finds Jim Herrick, Rick Ravon, the former champion, and James Watson. Yari Brewpocker, who came off a great run last week, he is going to be on the inside of row number 5 alongside of Gary Corley and Eric Schaus. Jack Walls, making his first start of his career, will be on the inside of row 6 alongside another debuting driver, Mike Gibson. Then another debuting driver. Debuting drivers to complete row 6 with Tatis McMurray. Jason Hand will be on the inside of row number 7 alongside of Jim Brooks in the middle, and AJ Hobson will be on the top side. Row 8 will find Alec Coates, Joe McAdory, and Nicholas Winook. Benjamin Combs will be on the inside of row 9 with Sebastian Kinder and Ryan Mullis completing that 9th row. And in the final row, Isaac Muck would have rolled off from the 31st position, or correction, that would have been the 28th position, and Justin Newcombe would roll off from 29th. Looks like 25 drivers are actually going to take the green flag here this evening. Now, I mentioned that I'm going to be joined by broadcast colleague Matthew Rodriguez in a few moments. He's got some duties out there on the racetrack right now as he is leading the field around in the Chevrolet Corvette C8R. And he'll be pulling that thing to pit road and then joining me up in the booth momentarily. Let's talk about the point standings coming into this race. As mentioned, the championship is not officially decided when the checkered flag waves here today, as it has in past seasons. We will be racing at Iowa Speedway for the season finale next Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But Nick Degroot comes into this race with a pretty commanding lead. 149 points back sits Craig Forsythe. Matt Wagner currently 176 points back in 3rd. Jim Brooks and Gail Brooks in 4th and 5th, 183 and 187 points respectively. Now, not to say, though, that the championship couldn't be up for grabs and in very close proximity when we get to Iowa next week, since, as I mentioned, this is the third of the 3 double points races. We had the season opener at Auto Club, last week at Michigan, and here today at Indianapolis. If driver Nick Degroot runs into an issue here today and does not finish high in the field, it's a big opportunity for drivers like Forsythe, Wagner, and both of the Brooks, despite being triple digits back, to be able to gain a huge chunk of points and be within striking distance of Nick Degroot heading into the season finale. It also gives hope to a couple of other drivers that might be able to be long shots next week, Jeff Heisong and Yari Brewpocker, but I feel for those 2 drivers, they are coming into this race in a must-win situation. It was interesting, too, talking to a number of our podium finishers last week, 2 of which coming into this race, Forsythe and Degroot, former Dark Horse 500 winners, about how they approach a race like this. The longest race of the season, 200 laps in total, and basically they said that it is, you take the Dark Horse 500 and you put it all in a segment of its own, and then the rest of the season is the rest of the season where you focus on the championship. It's that big of a special event that you set it aside, and everybody wants to be able to say that they took a checkered flag and hoisted a trophy here at the hallowed grounds, the home of the Brickyard. We should see the lights go out atop of the pace car this next time by, which will be the 1 to green signal, and these drivers will be turned loose for what should be an exciting event here today. We have seen in the past drivers with the adrenaline at an all-time high, really anxious to make moves, get the track position to settle in a long green flag run, and sometimes mistakes are made early on. Then we end up usually getting into the long green flag runs around the midway point of the race, heading towards the end, but almost invariably, I don't know how it happens, we always seem to have that late race drama. Late race caution comes out, bunches the field back up, and sometimes a driver that spends most of the day running just outside of the top 5 or even outside of the top 10 finds their way up to the front late and is able to snag a last-minute checkered flag. So anybody in the field here today, provided they stay on the lead lap, they certainly have a shot of winning this race if the cautions and the elements of this race fall in their favor. Speaking of an element of this racetrack, let's talk about pit road, because that's going to be a busy place. These drivers here today are going to be able to go anywhere from about 29 to 31 laps on fuel, which means they will be making several trips to pit lane. Now, it's not one of the most difficult pit lanes to get onto, but it certainly will cost you a lot of time if you make a mistake. Sometimes drivers can lock up the brakes trying to get onto pit road, spin the thing around, and invariably, if you carry too much speed and lock up the brakes, you may get pegged for speeding. And much like at a super speedway, mere seconds can cost you a lot of time on pit road, resulting onto the racetrack. And so we will have to see if these drivers can, that famous word that we talk about, it seems like week after week, execute on pit road, because it could be a difference maker into whether you're going to win this race today or not. It appears we had a car on pit road. That was, I believe, the 39 of James Watson, who is now returning back to the racetrack. Not certain what the scenario was there, but drivers are not allowed to go down pit lane under these pacing laps. So we'll see what the end result on that was. Also bear in mind that drivers here today will have the utilization of a faster pair should they need it. So if they run into trouble in the early stages, they do have a mulligan to fall back on, which keeps them in the running of today's race. You will notice that Matthew Rodriguez in that Chevy Corvette pace car quite a ways away, now pulling down to the access road. The reason for that being, as soon as that pace car hits pit road and they come off turn 4, race leader, pole sitter Craig Forsythe gets to go whenever he wants to. It is the race leader's prerogative of where the acceleration zone is off of turn number 4. And then everybody else has to follow suit. It's going to be the most congested you'll probably see drivers here today. 3 wide start all the way back through the field as Craig Forsythe The winner of this event back in Season 2 gets ready to bring them through turn number 4. Henry Bennett and Matt Wagner alongside of him. We are waiting on the 27 to choose when exactly the moment will be. He's going to make them wait here as we head down the front straightaway, getting closer to that yard of bricks. Now through the gears goes Craig Forsythe, and the 5th season Dark Horse 500 is underway at Indianapolis. Most part, looks like the top 5, top 6 all going to get single file. Everyone getting organized, realizing this is going to be a long race. But Henry Bennett not willing to wait. He's going to dive to the inside and look to lead the first lap of this race. Matt Wagner going to stay in line in third. Decided not to step out as Bennett will clear for the spot. Forsythe drops back to second. Henry Bennett going to come around and see if he can lead the first lap of today's event. Forsythe's going to get a run. It might be a photo finish to see who's going to lead this first lap. Looks like it's going to be Forsythe by half a car length, officially leading the first lap of the race here today at Indianapolis. Bennett back to second. Wagner slots to third as Degroot just got around Charles Teed for the 4th position, dropping Teed back to the final spot inside of the top 5. Looks like all 25 drivers did take the green flag, all running up in this lead pack at this point in time, as Bennett back to the inside for that race lead. He will take it. They get awfully stacked up there from third place on back as Degroot jumps to the outside of Wagner. Teed is there as well. Jeff Hysong on the tail end of this group. You got a group of 6 and another group of about 8 back in pack number 2, running only about 0.8 of a second off of pack number 1 as Forsythe back to the inside. This is something we're going to see all day long as well. These long straightaways enabling drivers to be able to get huge toes, huge runs, and big moves into turns 1 and 3. Just have to make sure you don't make that move too late, or else the driver that you're trying to pass might not be ready and might cut off your nose heading into these rather tight corners here. A lot of speed, not a lot of banking for these drivers to be able to lean on, but as I ended up hearing in pre-race from broadcast colleague Matthew Rodriguez, these cars stick down to the racetrack, which allows drivers to have a little bit more stability in making such moves. And I believe actually we now, making the long ascent up here to the skybox from pit road, we've got Matthew Rodriguez here. Matt, it's great to have you here. Obviously, you were able to feel the energy down there in that pace car with those drivers lined up behind you. Doesn't look like the adrenaline slowed down at all here. These guys are ready to go.
No, it's really the anticipation, and obviously everyone wants to get going and everyone wants to start winning the race, but you just got to remember, this is a 200-lap event. It will take a while to get to the finish, and a lot of these drivers have differing strategies. You've got some guys in the back trying to ride this thing out. Hopefully they get a little bit of a bearings of the car, and the guys up front like Forsythe, Bennett, Degroot, Teed, they want to go out and dominate this race.
It's interesting you bring up strategy because, talking all about the elements of this race as we've observed it in past seasons, there always seems to be a strategy. But, when I talked to guys like Craig Forsythe and Nick Degroot, former winners of this event last week, asked them if they had a strategy coming in, they said, no, we're just going to kind of play it by ear. And I think that's what everybody has to do because if you think about it, this type of race, it's never going to be the same season after season.
Absolutely. And it just a little bit changes where there's things that you can learn from previous seasons, like how the car handles, how the draft works, things you can carry over from even the IR18 to think about the Dallara 09, how that car drives, and it's so different. But there's always variables like, hey, it's the temperature outside, the humidity, how much grip this track has, and again, even the people around you, it changed so much.
Looking at Charles Teed, he's now taken the top position. I mentioned about a lot of drivers that are in the hunt for the championship this season. A lot of that can change from now till next week at Iowa, especially with this being a double points event. But how about a guy like Charles Teed coming into this race 14th in the point standings? He did have a pole position this year, but only 1 top 5 and 2 top 10s in the starts he's made this year. I mean, if it's a guy that's hungry to be able to go out and win a big race, you'd have to probably look no further than Teed.
And you got to think, there's a lot of bragging rights to go on with this race where even if you're down the championship, even if you don't really have that great of a shot of rebounding, has been a pretty terrible season, all things considered. I mean, you can at least say, hey, I won the Indy 500. I did all 200 laps. I won that race. No one else can take that away from me. And it goes in for years and years. And you got to think there's a special prize on the line where I believe if it's a 0x race winner, they get a custom diecast, I think.
think about it too, there's only one driver in the field that has won a Dark Horse 500 and a championship. That's Nick Degroot. If Charles Teed was able to win the Dark Horse 500 here today, he would join Nick Degroot on that illustrious list. Of course, the inaugural champion back in Season 1.
And it looks like I'm very happy to see all the drivers kind of taking it easy. I think they're all really just trying to learn the boundaries at the moment. Some are getting a little bit more racy back in the pack, but you can see that almost everyone in the front, they've all got this strategy. And I think you may have talked and touched about it a little bit, but the pit window for these guys are about 29 to 38 or 31 laps. And if these drivers can average about 31 laps per stop, you have the potential to eliminate an entire stop.
Of course, as well, a big thing that you have to do to be able to reach that kind of scenario you're talking about is stay up in the draft, because much like at a super speedway, you're going to use up a lot more fuel if you're running all by your lonesome. If you've got the slipstream of somebody, that's going to help you save a little bit here and there.
And here comes a big thing, which is that's much of a team strategy or, hey, a friend strategy, but that always goes to a certain extent where you say, man, I'm willing to help you until we get to this point. And, after that, I don't know if I'm going to be that friendly working with you. I like you, Seth, but if it's 3 laps left, I don't know if I'm going to be working with you the same if I was working with you on lap 5.
Riding on board here with Rick Ravon, 8th position. Of course, the...
Oh, caution's out.
Oh!
Eric Schaus! He's flipping!
And he is on pit road, fortunately. No other driver is going to get involved as, man, a hard hit for him. Might have hit that pit wall, perhaps.
Ooh.
And I mentioned this as well. If you run into trouble early, you love the fact that you've got that faster pair to fall back on. Well, 13 laps in, that's what Eric Schaus is going to have to do.
Well, it's even a harder hit for Eric Schaus because not only is he going to burn a faster pair, he still has to tow to pit road. Now, you may be saying, hey, he wrecked on pit road, so he shouldn't have to tow that far. Still, that's about 30, 40 seconds of a tow. And that's 30, 40 seconds easily can put you a lap down. And if we don't get that many cautions, that can be extremely hard to claw your way back.
Well, definitely a multi-car incident. Not only the car that he made contact with, but there was another car. I'm trying to figure out who that gray machine was. I believe
I believe it was the 60 of Joseph Morales.
I think you're right, and that's what sent Schaus airborne.
I'm not exactly sure if... I don't really know if Eric Schaus thought he had a lane up. I think it was one of those kind of scenarios where Morales came down, Schaus was kind of coming up the side draft a little bit, and unfortunately both met in the middle, and Eric got the worst end of it.
You know, it's interesting you were bringing up about some of those drivers towards the back that were racing pretty hard. And, we saw even on occasion, I think they were 3 wide for a brief moment. Schaus was back in that group. Now, why were they racing this hard this early? Was it just testing the waters of what passes they could make? Or was it desperation in just trying to take those runs and pick up positions as early on as you could?
I mean, this is historically a hard race where if everyone's single file, you really have to work and methodically get your passes and get your car slowly up to the front of the field. Eric did not have that great of a qualifying effort, started 16th, so he had to slowly claw his way back up into the field. Unfortunately, I think he just made an error and tried to get up a little bit too early, and looks like he may have, he's currently... Looks like he may go a few laps down. He is currently 2. So I'm not sure if he's going to go one more down, but obviously a tough break. There's still a long race, so he can still claw his way back in there.
Yeah, I'll let you follow up on this. It looks like, at least on my telemetry, like he may have already called it an early day, which surprises me, especially since he would have had that mulligan to fall back on. And, we mentioned as well that, usually in this race in the past, we've had some early yellow flags. So even if he had lost a lap, having to wait for that tow to be able to take on that faster pair, more than likely would have gotten a lucky dog to get him back on the lead lap before this race was over.
I will admit, the sight of seeing the pit wall suddenly in my vision may have scared me enough where I would have alted F4 out of the session. However, I do see Eric Schaus has connected back. I don't know if he's loaded back into the session, so we're going to have to kind of wait and see on that, but definitely hope he gets a chance to come back out and run a few more laps.
So we ran about 12 laps under green flag conditions there. Well, actually, no, correction. It would have been, 9 laps if we count in also the pace laps there at the initial start. Everybody came to pit road with the exception of Yari Brewpocker, and everybody came down and took on tires. So what does that say to you? Are these drivers feeling that with the slick conditions out there, that grip is at an optimal high, that you definitely need to come down and get that extra set of Firestones? Or is this driver is basically just saying, all right, you know what? I don't want to test and see what it feels like on slicker tires. I want the stability.
See, I find that in direct opposition to what I was hearing earlier, where on a one whole fuel cycle run, they were only getting about 96% of rare. So we still had really great tire wear. They could actually double, maybe triple stint these tires. I think right now it's just, hey, we have the opportunity. Everyone's going to come in. Might as well just go throw a set of new tires on it and kind of open up our options for later. As we're slowly rolling, pace car lights are out. Yari Brewpocker, Charles Teed, Craig Forsythe, Henry Bennett, and Nick Degroot are our top 5. Kind of looking through the field, there has been some big movers. Obviously, Yari Brewpocker, Charles Teed. Yari Brewpocker obviously staying out on that last pit stop. He is up 12. Charles Teed up 3 from his starting position. But almost looking for our biggest loser. It looks like Eric Schaus is back on the racetrack now. He is currently looks to be only 1 lap down, which is very impressive. So if him only being 1 lap down, obviously just got to wait for a caution to get him back on that lead lap. Going back through the top 10, looks like Jeff Heisong, Matt Wagner, Rick Rayvon, Gail Brooks, Eric Peterson, Joseph Morales. Even after that little bit of contact, he manages to slide up to 11th place. So, hey, I think there's a really good chance here.
Interesting that a number of drivers that were towards the back moving up to the front, you have to think maybe a little bit of pit strategy coming into play there. And that's the thing too, we've seen this in the past as well, that you wouldn't necessarily think it at a track as big as this and how you see drivers get runs, but this is really a track position type race, just in the fact that it is so difficult to be able to make multiple passes in a short span of time. Usually you spend 5-6 laps just preparing yourself to make a pass on one driver per position.
And that's the thing where these cars, at least I'll speak from personal experience, racing the NASCAR stock cars around Indy and these Indianapolis, really the Indy 500 in general, these cars are just so different, and it's just an entirely different mindset to, hey, you have to be on the edge, but these things love downforce. They absolutely adore downforce, and they will happily go faster with them. And these are so much harder to pass because if you have the guy in front of you, you really have to work to try and intimidate the guy, maybe get him a little bit out of his lane, because these cars, they are on rails. They don't make mistakes. It's really always driver error.
It's got a little interesting around the 5th position. Nick Degroot, Rick Rayvon, Jeff Heisong in that mix. They were almost 3 wide down the front straightaway. Rayvon thought better of it, tucked back in line. They've got Matt Wagner there with them as well. Let's focus on Nick Degroot for a moment here. I mean, obviously a former winner of this event. More importantly, though, coming into this race, he is your current points leader, 149 points over his next competitor, Craig Forsythe. It's kind of a balancing act today here for Nick Degroot. He's said it. Any race he's in, he wants to go out there and he wants to win. But it's a double points race as well. Last thing he wants to do is run into trouble not once but twice, use up the faster pair, finish way back in the field, and then find himself in a scenario where he has to defend the championship next week. If anything, I almost wonder if he would be willing to, finish in a 2nd or 3rd position, secure himself the championship here today, even if he had a shot of winning this race.
Honestly, Seth, I'll go back to something that was said a few weeks ago in a different league, where almost it seems like instead of trying to change your strategy for a race, that's typically when people start getting in trouble, trying to do something different, trying to do something a little bit outside of our normal comfort zone of, hey, I need to go points racing. I don't normally go points racing. Let me try to save. And that's where typically mistakes happen, wrecks happen, and you get yourself into a hole. I think Nick Degroot just says, you know what? I'm not even going to go out and worry about it. I'm just going to go out and run the race like I normally do. If I win, I win. If I lose, I lose. Just don't wreck.
It's that mentality that I was talking about that really I think a lot of the drivers have adapted. We obviously focus on the fact that this is a race on the schedule, points on the line, championship on the line. These drivers go out here and kind of treat this as a special event.
Absolutely. We have a lot of non-Dark Horse regulars in here. Or regulars that usually run the IR18 Area 51 series, that, hey, they had a Saturday free and they really want to come out and run this event. And even race officials are stressing this in drivers' meeting that, hey, while this is a special event to some, this is still part of the series, and there is still guys going for championships in this series that we really need to be observant of. We need to be careful. Don't race them too hard. Obviously, don't pull a slider that you kind of, or if it's not going to work, and take out the entire field.
And you bring up those drivers that, we normally don't see week after week. A couple of them running outside of the top 15 right now. McMurray, Walls, Gibson. Not only are they drivers in the field here today that we could see as a, and I'll put this as a pun, a dark horse by the end of the day, being able to pick up the victory in their first start, but also those are positions, those are points that are out there. If you consider the fact that we've got these one-off drivers out here, there's about, 6, 7 positions up for grabs that normally wouldn't be there on a weekly basis that could play a big difference into our championship picture next week, depending on what happens with our top 5 drivers in the point standings.
And then you also have to think about that whole Nick Degroot scenario a few laps ago where, hey, there is big gain here where, again, my competitors, they could wreck out. They could finish 25th. They could be all the way down the order, and I have a huge advantage. But also, hey, in that flip side, if I end up wrecking this race, if I'm Nick Degroot, that's like 24th place. I've just lost a whole ton of points. Let's say my next championship rival wins this race. I'm in trouble.
Looking here at 9th place, that's Gail Brooks getting around Eric Peterson. Those two kind of on an island of their own right now. It's almost a full 2 seconds up to the lead pack, and there you see, I guess we'll call that group number 2 back there, because I'm not sure that 2 cars would be considered a group. That's about a second and a half back, AJ Hobson and company. Now we're noticing these guys here, Peterson and Gail Brooks, kind of doing the swap back and forth. We've seen this before at Auto Club. We saw them do it at Michigan as well. Kind of the way that these particular cars generate and maintain the speed through the corners and on the straightaway. When we end up getting to, and we know it's going to happen, when we get to green flag pit stops and we start to see the field get split up, we're going to see this more and more of packs trying to gap themselves to the other rest of the competition.
It's kind of funny, but there also is I almost want to say a forbidden strategy that is going to be in place, which is bump drafting, which is so odd to see these Indy cars that have those kind of needle-like noses that are built for aerodynamics and downforce to be pushing another one in a corner. And I will admit, I did test some of these out in practice. It is extremely sketchy.
Yeah,
but man, there is a...
First card rule bump drafting, though, you need to have a bumper, right?
Extremely. It's almost like the kind of the nose drafting that hooks in with the carbon fiber on the back.
Oh!
Ooh!
Yari Brewpocker, I think, did get the wall. There was contact between himself and Charles Teed.
Just looking at the side of that car, don't currently see any damage. Might have just scraped actually, no, I'm looking at the right side pod. There's a little bit of damage on the right side. Looks like it's pushing that little bit of aero. Definitely going to hurt him a little bit, but I think he can hold out until there's a caution or green flag pit stops.
You talked about it at the top of the program before we came on the air, just the speed that these drivers are carrying, especially into the corner. We see them entering into turn 1 at about 235. Obviously, these are open wheel suspensions, so even the slightest contact, I would assume, up into that outside wall is going to be detrimental to that car and its handling for the remainder of the run.
Absolutely. But going back to that previous point, there are some drivers who will attempt bump drafting later in this race. Some said, hey, since it's a special event to me, I'm going to try bump drafting at the earliest possibility. It is extremely sketchy. The cars feel extremely unstable. But these cars get about a 5, 10, 15 mile an hour boost out of that. So it's kind of, you're playing with fire here where it can easily aid you and it can easily kind of burn you. It looks like Yari Brewpocker is coming down pit road now to repair the car.
Now, the good news is this is a 2.5 mile speedway, so kind of put that in the same category as how long it would take to get around Daytona. So there is the likelihood that Brewpocker could come down, make the pit stop, and come back out still on the lead lap. Granted, though, he would probably need a caution sooner rather than later, because very much like a super speedway as well, a pack of cars is going to generate a lot more speed than a single car out there all by his lonesome. So there is a likelihood, even if he remains on the lead lap with the completion of this stop, that this lead pack could gobble him up and put him a lap down to green flag conditions.
And easily, that kind of puts a little bit of an unfortunate thorn in Eric Schaus's side, where he is now not only, or he is potentially now not the only lap down car. which makes it harder for him to get his lap back and slowly claw his way back up.
He is on the lead lap at this point in time, but he did also take on the fast spread. There you see him just on the left side of the screen, about maybe a third of the straightaway ahead of new race leader Nick Degroot. Saw him get around Charles Teed a couple of laps ago. Now Rick Ravon has moved up into that second position. And, I have to think there in the case of Rick Ravon, last season won the championship, but he said, man, I would have loved to have, had the cake, but had the frosting as well. The Dark Horse 500 victory. Now he comes into this season, the defending champion. We've seen him run a couple of races in the past. Has been to victory lane twice since then. No pressure, really, for Rick Ravon coming into this one. He doesn't have to worry about points, doesn't have to worry about the championship. Now it's all just business of being that first car to the checkered flag by the end of the day.
And that's the thing, like, events like the Indianapolis 500, the Coca-Cola 600, even the Daytona 500, think about that, where it's these long endurance type events. I mean, it turns guys who are always happy just to ride around, maybe get a good finish, hopefully get a top 10, to guys who, man, I want to go out and win this race. I mean, I've put 2-3 hours of time in the race alone, not including the time that you maybe spent making the car, making the livery, making everything on your car, working with your team, working on strategies, running the race back. I mean, there is hours and countless days of work that goes into this. So, I mean, there's a little bit of honor and pride in this. Man, I want to go out and win this.
Absolutely. As now you see Yari Brewpocker about to get reeled in by the trio of Ravon, Groot, and Forsythe. There you see him snaking down the front straightaway, trying to not only get the draft of the car in front of them, but cut the draft of the car behind them. Ravon's going to swing around. Brewpocker, who pushes up off of turn one. That's going to slow up Nick Degroot, at least for the brief moment. I also noticed a couple of laps ago going into turn one, Rick Ravon got his left sides awfully close to that rumble strip down there, which is not really down there to be used. It's more of a guideline of letting you know where the racetrack ends and the grass begins. As we look at the weather conditions here today, it's a nice balmy 65, but the track temp 90 degrees, and you have to think that as the tires wear down, it gets a little slicker, and that's why we maybe saw Rick Ravon get a little loose a little while ago.
Yeah, these teams are very optimistic in practice that it wouldn't really be that tire heavy of a track, but again, track conditions change, situations change, and hey, maybe that 5% that may drop off that tire, maybe that 10% might drop off that tire, they're not going to feel as confident about that. And you got to think, when you're exiting pit road, that little bit of wear can make you that much more unstable. And again, if you have any doubt in your car, are you going to push your car as hard as you would if you had full confidence that, hey, this is brand new tires, I can haul?
Interesting you bring that up, because let me pose a question to you here. Maybe we won't see it like in the first round of pit stops. Let's say we're closer to the end of this race. Would a driver be confident enough to come down and just put fuel in the car, go out there with the tires they just had the last green flag run on? We saw when the caution came out for the first time today, everybody except one came down pit road and took on tires.
Well, I mean, let's use Yari Brewpocker as a little bit of an example here. Even with those older tires, why they weren't that old of tires, they were still competitive and still hanging on the front of that field. Now, obviously, after the damage, I can't really speak on that, about how competitive they were. We could use this as a little bit of a reverse scenario. Look at Yari Brewpocker now. I'm pretty sure he has new tires on his car. And then look at the three in front of him that have semi-worn tires, almost in the same situation he was in. If we kind of ignore the fact that he's now fallen off the draft, he was hanging with them. So we can kind of use that idea that, hey, maybe if we double stint these tires, they're not going to be as bad as, hey, what we thought they would be. We're not going to fall off that heavy. Now, of course, right now is the time you experiment. You experiment early in the race. Don't wait till like lap 170, 180, as it looks like Nick Degroot has a little bit of connection issues. But don't wait till that final few laps to start testing it, because at that point it's just a desperation move, and you're just hoping for the best.
A great point. We got someone diving onto pit road, it looks like, back there. I think that's the 90... No, it's the 7 of Gary Corley and the 10 of Alex Coates. Now, this is about 20 laps into this run. Little early for these guys to be coming down, or is this maybe a back-to-front type strategy, working the race from the checkered flag back to the green flag?
It could always be. I know of people who end up trying to work the races from back to front, and again, you just have to be flexible with your strategy, where if you identify something's not going to work or you're really iffy, you need to make that call immediately that it needs to be changed. As you see Nick Degroot slowly shoot down pit road. Looks like he has no friends other than Joseph Morales.
And yep, that's going to be the only two this lap that are going to come down pit road. So Degroot, this is going to be detrimental to him in the regard that there's no guarantee that he's going to, when everything cycles around, be with the group of drivers he was with prior to his pit stop. And he could find himself really all by his lonesome, and we've already documented the problems you run into when you have no drafting partners turning laps here at a track as big as Indianapolis. Rick Raybon, Craig Forsythe going to stay out longer. Henry Bennett staying out longer as well. Kind of wondering what the call was there on Nick Degroot, because again, for most of these drivers that we've seen come to pit road in the last lap or two, this is about, what, 10 laps sooner than we expected them?
He could be trying to stick to his fuel strategy. Of again, these drivers kind of have that 31 laps kind of circled in their head that, hey, we at least need to average this. Currently, it's 36 laps into this event. And you kind of have that idea of, hey, if we keep this cycle up and we keep this fuel mileage up, we can keep trying to stay on strategy, everything else. But I will admit, it's a little bit of an odd strategy to try and undercut this early in the race.
We've had a total of about 9 drivers that have come to pit lane here. Oh, we got a car in the wall! That was, I believe, Yari Brewpocker again in the 49. He went down and tagged the inside wall in the front straightaway. No, it was not him.
Joseph Morales is out of fuel. That's why Yari Brewpocker had to swerve so suddenly to avoid him.
We talk about Morales coming down pit lane on the same lap as Nick Degroot. I'm not certain how that car wouldn't have taken on any fuel. Our telemetry says that he did complete the pit stop, so he's on the back straightaway right now. There's no way, I don't think that car is going to be able to coast back around, currently under 60 miles per hour. We may end up seeing a full course yellow here.
Currently, it sounds like he has no engine power. I'm wondering if he maybe potentially cut the ignition and he just lost the ignition, or again, it could be, like you said, out of fuel, but it is an oddly long pit stop to not take fuel.
Got another car coming down pit road for a second time. Mike Gibson in the 5. He was on pit road about 2 laps ago and now back down pit lane again. Maybe a potential pit road speedy penalty for him, making his first start of the season one of those one-off drivers.
Believe it or not, he's out of fuel. That's 2 fueling issues in the last 2 laps.
Quite the mystery there, quite the conundrum, because both of them, according to what I saw, said that they made a full-length pit stop. So,
yeah, very weird. That is something you got to kind of keep an eye on, where I wonder if those guys were only expecting or set up for another yellow flag, but even then, I don't know why you wouldn't take fuel. That is weird.
It's going to put Mike Gibson 2 laps down. Joseph Morales still on pit lane. He just got put a 4th lap down. And if you're Eric Schaus, we talked about the issues he had earlier, the wild ride off of turn 4. He was, at that time, the only car 1 lap down. There's 5 other drivers that are also 1 lap down, and Schaus is not in the free pass position as things run right now. Yari Brewpocker is in 18th place, so if we were to get a caution, Schaus would not be in the free pass spot.
That's why I tell you, this is a tough race. And it's really a race where, hey, if things are going bad, it usually continues getting worse. And it just piles on. So it's kind of one of these scenarios that he needs to kind of hang tough, hope for some cautions, hope for some luck to kind of fall his way.
Like Morales is returning back to the racetrack now. He will be at least 4, maybe 5 laps down as we watch this battle here. Things getting wadded up from 5th place on back. That's where Matt Wagner, Gale Brooks, Charles Teed are in the vicinity. AJ Hobson's right there as well. Eric Peterson's in this mix. So, you know, if we're looking at a group of drivers kind of trying to one-up each other, heading towards this completion of green flag pit stops, this might be the group to look at.
Racing unusually hard for 5th place, but again, Indy 500. Gotta take everything you can get.
Rayvon, Craig Forsythe keep going back and forth. You know, there's just so many similarities from Dark Horse 500 to Dark Horse 500 season after season. This is something that we see all the time as well. Driver running in first, gets passed by the driver running second on the back straightaway. Then next time by, it's the do-si-do. Another driver goes to the front. Then it's the same thing on the next straightaway. And it's interesting when you talk to drivers after the race, you ask them, you know, what was that all about? Were you sizing up the competition? And it's just, no, just out there having some fun.
I mean, you got to do, I will admit, with it being such a long race, you have to keep yourself mentally aware and really entertained. Well, you'll notice yourself doing weird things just to have fun, just to laugh. And I think that's one of those things where you got to kind of keep yourself entertained. You got to keep your mind active and ready. So, hey, having fun with another driver, just playing around, trying to pass him, that keeps you aware, that keeps you alert.
Saw that bright yellow 89 there on the bottom of your screen. There he is on the left side of the screen, Nick Degroot. Right now on the tail end of the lead lap. He has picked up another car to draft with, but he's only running maybe about 8, 9 car lengths ahead of the top two, who would love nothing more than to put him a lap down. Now, granted, Degroot's already made a pit stop. These two still have to head on to pit lane, but that would beat some track position. Those two would gain on Nick Degroot before they make that pit stop, and really could translate to having Nick Degroot quite a ways back from the race lead. After everything cycles, is Eric Peterson, 36, going to come down pit road this time.
It sounds like Rick Rayvon is also going to follow down pit road this time. Same with the 63.
Justin Newcombe was on pit lane this time. Ryan Mullis just hit pit lane also. This is around that fuel window we were talking about. These drivers here about to come around and complete their 30th lap, the race leaders, as Rayvon dives it on to pit lane, and we'll probably see a number of others of our top 10 coming down this lap also.
You got to think the wheels are turning on the strategy end, where everyone's just trying to run through their head. How am I going to run this race and try to blitz everyone, maybe on fuel strategy, maybe not taking tires, so on and so forth.
Gail Brooks, AJ Hobson, Jack Walls, James Watson all down this time. Sebastian Kinder is on pit road as well. Craig Forsythe will undoubtedly be on pit lane this following lap, as this would be the max number we were given, 31 laps on this run. We're waiting for him and another 6 drivers to come down pit lane. Here comes the race leader.
I'm honestly not really seeing people deviate from that number too much. And that's kind of concerning and kind of confidence raising, where you know the data is correct, but you're a little bit concerned saying, oh man, I wish the data was a little bit off so I could have made it more laps and I could have surprised myself.
Interesting here. Talk about drivers stretching it. 2 drivers going to go an extra lap. Matt Wagner and Jim Herrick will now be first and second. They'll be the last 2 that we'll see come on to pit lane. What do you think? That 1 extra lap going to be important in the closing stages of this thing?
Never say never. That's all I'll say. I've ran out of fuel enough times to know that 1 extra lap can make all the difference.
Well, Matt Wagner won this event back in Season 3, so obviously we're seeing varying strategies by the 3 defending winners. We saw Nick Degroot short pit. Forsythe came in on the number we expected, and Wagner went an extra lap. So 3 former winners of this race, 3 entirely different varying strategies. It looks like Rick Rayvon will be coming around and being the race leader when all is said and done. Forsythe will more than likely be second. It looks like Nick Degroot will come out in the 3rd position, but he'll be under fire from Henry Bennett. You know, you talk about drivers having determination and motivation in a race like this. How about Bennett? Runner-up finisher in this event twice, back in both season 3 and last season, season 4. So this is a guy that's been twice a bridesmaid, never a bride. Obviously here today, I think he's looking for a little bit of redemption.
And I'll say those second places hurt more than anything else. And as much as you say, oh, I mean, at least I'm finished second, that doesn't really make up for the whole fact of, man, I just did 200 laps and I was so close to victory and I finished second. You want that win worse than anything else.
If I recall correctly, I believe that Henry Bennett, when he finished runner-up back in Season 3, he was one of the one-off drivers. Last year, though, he ran full-time. Not only finished runner-up in the Dark Horse 500, but also finished runner-up in the championship standings as well. So a bit of a double whammy for him this season running as a one-off driver once again, as he's still trying to reel in Nick Degroot about a half second back. Cycle around, Forsythe the leader, Rick Ravon in second, although that seems to change just about every straightaway. They've got over 3 seconds back to Degroot in third, Henry Bennett in fourth, Matt Wagner right now in fifth. Give a call to AJ Hobson. You know, I think he kind of set out to make me a liar in the beginning stages of this race. I said it's so difficult to pass. Well, he started 20th, and he's up 15 spots, now just got by Wagner to the 5th position.
You know, I'm just sitting here thinking about Henry Bennett. Henry Bennett's biggest issue was either he was finishing second or his internet was letting him down.
That's true. That is very true. Well, as of right now, things are looking good as we are.
Better go find some wood here in a moment.
You better. We're about a quarter of the way through this race. Craig Forsythe, Rick Ravon continue to battle for the race lead in the Season 5 Dark Horse 500, presented by Troy Lee Designs. We're going to step aside for a quick commercial break. You're not going to miss a thing. We're going FRN side by side.
Welcome, race fans. This is Paul Page, the voice of IndyCars. And today we're excited to present another IndyCar event brought to you by the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. From the Unzers to Mears, Foyt, and Andretti, now it's Corley, Peterson, Davies, Gardner, and Teague. You can expect high speeds, incredible wheel-to-wheel action, and intense drama that you could only get in an IndyCar. So sit back and enjoy your favorite drivers from all over the world take the track. Dark Horse IndyCar drivers, start your engine. Welcome, race fans. This is Paul Page, the voice of IndyCars. And today we're excited to present another IndyCar event brought to you by the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. From the Unzers to Mears, Foyt, and Andretti, now it's Corley, Peterson, Davies, Gardner, and Teague. You can expect high speeds, incredible wheel-to-wheel action, and intense drama that you could only get in an IndyCar. So sit back and enjoy your favorite drivers from all over the world take the track. Dark Horse IndyCar drivers, start your engine. Welcome, race fans. This is Paul Page, the voice of IndyCars. And today we're excited to present another IndyCar event brought to you by the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. From the Unzers to Mears, Foyt, and Andretti, now it's Corley, Peterson, Davies, Gardner, and Teague. You can expect high speeds, incredible wheel-to-wheel action, and intense drama that you could only get in an IndyCar. So sit back and enjoy your favorite drivers from all over the world take the track. Dark Horse IndyCar drivers, start your engine.
Caution on the speedway for the second time today in the Dark Horse 500, presented by Troy Lee Designs. I think it might have possibly been the 40 of Jim Herrick bringing out this yellow flag just past the quarter mark.
Yeah, and I'm just looking back here. It looks like Jim Herrick might have slightly pushed up the track, or it might have just been a little bit of misjudgment, clobbered the wall a little bit, and looks like I'm thinking Eric Peterson may have paid the price there.
To look at it is, oh yeah, Herrick brushing the wall. Well, they both kind of brushed the wall together. I don't know if that was a case of maybe Peterson just following the same line that Herrick was running, and both of them bounced off, screwed up off speed, and as Herrick was trying to gather it up, to your point, wrong place, wrong time for the 36 of Eric Peterson. So yellow flag going to fly. Big break for a bunch of drivers that are going to be able to bunch back up here with the leaders, and also going to help, I believe that is going to put Yari Brewpocker back on the lead lap, if I'm not mistaken. We saw in that side-by-side him come to pit road for what was a scheduled stop off sequence with everybody else, and he gets the free pass.
And you got to think, that's just a game changer, kind of helps you get back in the race. Now, it's kind of what you do with that that's going to really determine if it's, I guess, really worth it. Now, you got to look at some of these guys who are staying out. If they are a lap down, like Mike Gibson, they do have the potential to get a wave around here.
See if any of those drivers take that option. Some of them, I think for the most part, are anywhere from 10 to 14 laps on their run. It's a wonder we didn't have a couple more drivers get involved in that wreck, to be honest, too. About 2 or 3 drivers entering into the vicinity, and this is one of those racetracks where you never know where the spinning car is going to be by the time you get there.
My general rule when it comes to wave rounds is I'm going to try and take a wave around at the earliest opportunity, just trying to see if I can get a little bit of advantage, because everyone's going to be coming down pit road this time to try and get new tires, get fuel topped off, hope for a quick caution, then slowly dip down pit road, get new tires, get back up with the field. Just got to hope for that quick caution, though.
AJ Hobson is going to be the lone driver to stay out here, and will subsequently be the one to lead us back to green. Everybody else came down pit lane. Forsythe, Rivon, Bennett, and Degroot. They were the top 4 coming down and leaving pit lanes. So that's going to be your top 5 when we go back green flag racing. Jim Herrick and Eric Peterson. I'm assuming that the time we're seeing them spend on pit road is for the tows. I would assume that they're going to have to take on their fast repairs here. I don't think that this is them sitting on pit lane trying to get manual repairs done.
Never know. You never know.
As of right now, we actually have 3 drivers that have taken on their fast repair. 2 of them we've already documented, Yari Brewpocker and Eric Schaus. Also add Justin Newcombe to the list. He took on his fast repair under that last round of green flag pit stop. So one of our one-off drivers does not have the mulligan available to him, as we got a couple of more drivers hitting pit lane this time. It's like only one driver is going to be taking the wave around here, and that is going to be, I believe that is, try to make out which driver that was. That was, I
believe it was Mike Gibson.
Yes, you are correct. I have trouble with these DW12s. I can only tell them by the livery. I can't make out those numbers. I have to squint.
See, that reminds me of the time we made Charles Teed's car pink. It was so visible on track.
It was so easy to pick him out in the field.
Yeah.
I can always tell Eric Schaus because it's the bright green car with the bright pink rims. I mean, make
Well, you don't
something
know
that
about
simple.
that now because Charles Teed is green and white.
Oh man. Well, you just threw a monkey wrench into the works. Appreciate it. Lights are out atop the pace car. We're going to get ready to go back green flag racing here. It will be on lap 60 of 203. Obviously, as we mentioned, the 203 is the 3 pace laps we had at the beginning. The full 200 laps being run here today. Hobson, Forsythe, Rayvon, Bennett, and Degroot going to be the top 5. Charles Teed lines up 6th. Matt Wagner 7th. Jeff Hysong, Gail Brooks, and Alex Coates going to complete the top 10. What do you think about this caution for Nick Degroot? Because we saw him off strategy with everybody else. Now with this yellow flag coming down, he comes down pit road with everybody. They're all back on the same pit sequence.
It's almost like a reset button.
It is.
Where if you weren't that confident about your strategy before, or you kind of got off sequence because you decided to stay out on that last caution, it really kind of lets you get back on your same strategy, really reset, and then say, okay, we're all on a level playing field again. Let's try to do this.
AJ hops in the control car after the pace car hit pit lane. Back up through the gear he goes, and he will lead us back to green. Now, Eric Schaus, you see, is lined up the second car in line, but he is a lap down in the 21st position. We were told in driver's meeting that the lap down cars, they integrate with the lead lap cars in single file formation. So Schaus, with the good track position here, going to try and get his lap back the hard way.
And that's the thing where this, really the lineup allowing lap cars to stay where they are helps them so much because it allows them to fight, hoping for that quick caution, allows them to try and fight at the front of the field, get their lap back that way.
Hobson's not going to give up, though. Going to battle back to the inside as we drop back to the second place battle. Rick Rayvon getting around Craig Forsythe. Henry Bennett right there as well with Nick Degroot and Charles Teed. It's interesting. I love the statistics. Well, we've seen Rick Rayvon and Craig Forsythe spend a good portion of this race out in front, swapping the lead back and forth. But one stat I don't think either one of them would like me to point out, that in the last 3 Dark Horse 500 races, the guy that's led the most laps has not won the race. Alex Van de Sant, Polo Hernandez, and last year Nick Degroot, or actually I've got that in reverse order. Nick Degroot season 2, and then Alex Van de Sant and Polo Hernandez. None of them were able to win the race after leading the most laps.
Now, Seth, let me ask you this, because we're both racers at heart, and I just want to know your opinion on this. But having you being the leader, which I know it's a hard thing to imagine, but you being the leader of a race and having to deal with a lap car fighting you constantly, and it's not even for position, trying to get that lap back. I mean, what kind of mindset does that put you in? And I mean, how do you respond to it? I know some drivers who will respond, get out of my way, but some drivers welcome it and even will look at that lap car and say, hey, man, I could take you as an advantage because we are a 2-car tandem here. We can just keep pulling away from his field.
I think that second option right there hits the nail on the head. It's not like Eric Schaus is several miles per hour off the pace and holding AJ Hobson up. If anything, he is an ally right now to the 63, allowing him to be able to do that back and forth, keep the momentum up. And we're even seeing that second place battle between Rick Rayvon and Craig Forsythe stifle their opportunity to be able to reel in AJ Hobson. So if anything, I think right now, what we would consider battling from our perspective, this is actually aiding AJ Hobson in holding the race leader. Remember too, he's out there on older tires, so that gives him a little ace in the hole as well of holding those fresh Firestones at bay.
And that kind of also shows you how strong these older tires are. We're making literally go toe-to-toe with the brand new tires and still be competitive.
I know it's stock cars versus open wheel cars, but we've made a lot of parallels here today to super speedway racing. And another way that it could be likened to super speedway racing is if you've got a lap machine that's up to speed, they could be what we call the proverbial X factor, be that one thing that could help you have the advantage and maybe eventually go on to win the race.
I mean, you got to look back at Michigan too, where Michigan was so highly contested, and really Michigan was much more of a high blood pressure race than this, just because of that banking in the multiple lanes. But Indy is a lot more of a challenge where, hey, there is that one preferred lane that is strong, and you can make runs other places, but you have to set them up.
That's really why we don't see a whole lot of side-by-side battling in the corners. Usually the driver that runs really, really low, pushing up. The driver that runs really high, having to try and arc it off the corner. And usually we see two drivers want the same piece of real estate, leading to carnage. That's why really we're seeing most of the passes for position taking place on the front and back straightaway.
I don't think anyone's going to be brave enough to try the corner pass yet. But you got to think, when it comes down to the last few laps, that dive bomb is going to be the most vital part of this race and easily can take someone out of the contention for this.
You know, obviously it's a long ways off, but let's talk about a scenario in the closing stages. You know, we were going over what they had in the drivers' meeting for drivers to be able to look over. Obviously, there was a verbal drivers' meeting as well, and, you know, the rule of no blocking. So, I mean, what kind of defenses can you play to make sure that somebody doesn't get a run on you with the checkered flag potentially on the line?
Yeah, that's one thing they really wanted to point out, which is weaving the break the draft is okay, but blocking is not. And how I interpret that rule, and this may be a little bit different than the official interpretation, but how I interpret that rule is that maybe the F1 style block of making one move is fine. Making that double move and coming back across their nose after we've already made the evasive maneuver, that's not. Where I understand coming down from that initial block and trying to stop a run, but doing that quick cutback, I don't see that.
One thing that I love with these camera shots we have is being able to see what the driver sees, that steering wheel, that panel, especially when we're at the high-speed racetracks like Michigan last week and Indianapolis here today, kind of seeing what the strategy is as far as the gearing that they run in. And, you know, we saw back during the side-by-side, we were on board then with Craig Forsythe and saw him for the most part in 6th gear. Just moments ago when we looked at him, he was in 5th gear as soon as he got passed by Rick Ravon back up to 6th gear. So we're even seeing strategy in terms of trying to get that optimal straightaway speed and then swapping over to the draft gear to save some fuel.
All right, now here's the second thing I want to throw at you. Right now, I'm looking at the gap between Ravon and Hobson, and I'm seeing that gap start to slowly close. Now, is this the point where you start getting frustrated about lap car? Or do you say, okay, this is fine, it's bound to happen anyway?
I think it's basically, it was going to happen regardless. I think what Hobson needed was them to continue to battle. It looks like now that 5-car pack has gotten themselves single-filed out. They're producing a lot more speed. So it was going to be inevitable that they get themselves organized. So I don't think it's a detriment still with Schaus and Hobson, the battling going on between those two. And maybe it's in the case here as well that Eric Schaus is realizing, hey, you know, that group is catching up. I got to make sure that I have myself ahead of the race leader just in case that scenario comes around where a caution comes out, because, you know, the difference between being on the tail end of the lead lap when the yellow flag comes out and getting the lucky dog could be track position. Schaus could be ahead of the lap down cars. If he gets the lucky dog, he has to start the tail end of the entire field.
If I was AJ Hobson, I'd honestly just tuck up behind Eric Schaus and just start trying to save as much fuel as possible, trying to make it to the end of this race. Now, I mean, you got to give props to Eric Schaus. I think really if his caution comes out, he will be a force later on in this race.
And I think maybe, too, if you look at it, Eric Schaus and AJ Hobson working together, and I think it's a mutual working together because those two are more than likely, based on the numbers, going to have to come down pit lane together somewhere in the next 5 to 6 laps.
Just looking pretty much the entire top 10, or sorry, my apologies, the entire top 6, really kind of in that solid line. Just looking back through the little bit of a field, Jeff Highsong and Matt Wagner currently looks like Wagner is a lot faster than Highsong. Highsong just ended up letting him by.
Got some battles outside the top 10 as well. James Watson and Pattis McMurray, they are battling right now for the 12th position. Remember, James Watson was on pit lane during the pacing laps. We weren't really certain what was going on with him, but nice recovery is just a couple spots outside of the top 10. What a slide move there, though. That was close.
Ravon is really pushing his luck here on the top 4. He is just trying to get up there.
Schaus trying to hold the bottom. We were talking about them not being all that brave going side by side through the corners. Well, how about double wide 2 rows deep?
I mean, here's the thing. You got to look for some of the people who don't have anything to lose in this championship. And Rick Ravon's one of those guys who, at least in my opinion, I don't really think he has very much to lose here.
No, not at all. He's got 2 victories this season at Richmond and Michigan, back-to-back victories. Of course, not in the hunt for the championship. Is only driven in the last 4 weeks, if I remember correctly. So he's just out there trophy hunting. And it's on the flip side, the driver making the move on him, Craig Forsythe. He's trying to do everything he can, get every point he can, get it doubled to reel in Nick Degroot, make it a championship battle by the time we get to Iowa next Wednesday.
He's got to keep pushing him, and it really puts the heat on Nick Degroot to potentially force him into situations where he shouldn't be in, and potentially make him make moves that he shouldn't make, or at least isn't advisable to make. And it looks like Eric Schaus will be coming down pit road this time, so a tough break. Unfortunately, cautions did not fall in his way.
It's like maybe the 63 of Hobson's coming down this time as well. Nope, he's not. He was awfully low there through 3 and 4, so I thought he might be coming down with Schaus, but he will stay out in the 3rd position. Eric Schaus was going to be in the free pass should we have gotten a yellow. Now he's going to lose that spot to Eric Peterson, who will now move up to the first car 1 lap down. It's interesting, too. You know, we saw how the green flag pit stop cycle had several drivers trapped a lap down. I think we had only 18 drivers, 17, 18 drivers on the lead lap at that point in time when the caution came out. Now we've got 20 drivers on the lead lap here, and we've got 3 drivers that are only 1 lap down.
Yeah, so it appears like AJ Hobson will be coming down this time, which kind of puts a troubling trend up, where it looks like these drivers are only really able to make it at 29, 30 laps instead of at 31 that we were originally predicting. Now, again, AJ Hobson, he was racing in clean air, which could have, obviously reduced fuel economy, but the kind of point still stands where right now we're kind of on the south end of the 30s. We're not really in that 31, 30, possibly 32 era that we need.
So what was the difference between seeing Hobson only make it 29 laps and seeing drivers like Jim Herrick and Matt Wagner be able to go as far as 32 laps when we had the green flag pit stops?
And I really think it's mindset where AJ Hobson was trying so hard to get past Eric Schaus that entire run that he kept darting the car down, trying everything to get by him. But when you try everything to get by him, you are now punching the hole through the air, which unfortunately makes you use more fuel, reduces your fuel economy, makes more drag. And at the end of the day, that's going to hurt you more. So realistically, they just outsaved them.
Charles Teed had a big moment last time out of turn number 4. That car pushed up, almost got the outside wall, and spent a good 2-3 car lengths just trying to gather that thing back up. Subsequently, you see he has lost touch with Nick Degroot and Henry Bennett. That was a 3-way battle for 3rd. It's now turned into a mano-a-mano.
It also looks like Gary Corley may have tapped the wall here just a few laps ago. I heard him come over the radio, said that he might be a little bit slower, of a little bit more damage. I'm not seeing a ton on his car, so imagine it's just a little bit of a tap, but obviously that's one thing that plays in the driver's mind where they don't have the camera angles that we have. They can't see the side of their car, so again, you got to think, if I run this thing into the wall at 220, I'm expecting the worst. I'm expecting the whole right side to be torn off of it.
The feeling out process for the drivers, trying to diagnose it themselves of how it's going to affect their car for the remainder of the run. Corley, though, having a solid outing in the 8th position. That's Alec Coates just behind him. So that is the ongoing battle inside of the top 10 is up ahead of them. Got some slicing and dicing. Jeff Heisong actually made such a darting move to the inside on the camera shot that we had. I thought he was spinning down pit road.
To be honest, the big thing that really plays against these drivers, it really is themselves. I mean, you got to think, your mind plays up this damage 10 times more than it probably is. You might have just scraped the wall just a little bit. And I noticed back there, it looks like Henry Bennett may have gotten the wall too. But your mind plays up this damage so much that it'll probably, your mind will think, oh, this doesn't feel right. This feels weird. I don't know what this is. When it probably is just something simple as tire wear.
It is going to make the pass, though, on Nick Degroot. And with those two battling, that has brought Charles Teed back into the mix. It's interesting, too, when you notice these drivers doing the swapping of positions. They'll tell you that that's how, in these DW12 cars, that's how they generate the speed to try and gap themselves to the rest of the competition. One would normally think, well, why don't they all just run nose to tail? Wouldn't that keep the speed going and keep the draft going better? Well, no, they really can't do that with these cars. They get such a run that if you get up that fast to somebody's back bumper, I know you've brought up the possibility of bump drafting, but considering the fact that there's about 5 miles per hour difference speed between the car that would push and the car that would be pushed, that's not really advised.
Absolutely, and I just noticed Yari Brewpocker. he has been slowly working his way through the field after getting that lap back. Right now, he is riding around 11th. He is currently trying to chase down the rest of the field, but right now I think he's hoping for a caution, maybe re-rack him, get him all reset back so he can start working through him again.
Yari Brewpocker has been really good at the speedways this season. Last week, coming off his second best finish of the season, and that was, of course, at Michigan, finishing in the 3rd position. He had a runner-up finish earlier on this year as well, and to your point, he could be, at least right now, maybe one of the top 5 fastest cars in the field with just how quickly he's working his way up towards the top 10.
He's just looking back here. Obviously, right now, we're kind of splitting the 2 little packs up front. Craig Forsythe, Rick Ray Vaughn, and Nick Degroot, Henry Bennett, and Charles Teed. Teed, right now, I'm not sure how confident Teed is in his car because he doesn't seem as quick. He doesn't seem as sharp as he did in the first part of this race.
Talking about Charles Teed and the struggles he's had this season, he has had only 2 finishes inside the top 10. His best finish wasn't even on the podium. It was a 4th place at Kentucky. So certainly looking to at least end out the season on a high note. And what better way to do it than in one of the biggest races of the season. Oh, we got a car spinning off of turn number 2 and hard to the inside wall. That's Justin Newcombe. No caution, as that was, I guess, deemed off the racing surface. The car had not fully spun until it was below the white line, so no yellow flag. We stay green, but we're certainly going to go back and look at a replay.
And it looks like he was fighting it so hard. This kind of goes back into one of those differences between the IndyCar and the NASCAR stock cars. Where NASCAR stock cars, they try to get as close to that grass as possible, dipping their tires below that white line. But the Indy cars are so much more different, where they don't like having their tires underneath that yellow line. Looks like he just got a little bit of that drainage strip or a little bit of the grass and just fought to recover it. And by the time it looks like he got a little bit of a handle on it, it was way too late and slammed right into the inside wall.
How fortunate was it that he didn't overcorrect that thing back up the track, because that was the race leaders coming into the vicinity.
And that's what we call a wrench being thrown into the race.
Oh, gracious. No kidding. Battle for 3rd continues on. Bennett and Degroot continue to swap back and forth. Charles Teed, I think that he could get up here to these drivers and make it a 3-way fight for the 3rd position. But in all honesty, I think he's just comfortable riding right now.
That's the thing where I really think this is kind of that lull period in the race where you need to effectively ride through this race, log some laps, just get some strategy, just make sure you're still in the fight, log some laps, get to the end of the race, and then we can really start showing what we have.
We've mentioned that there are full-timers this season, obviously, in the field. Some drivers that we have seen in the past running either full-time or in one-offs like this event. We've also got drivers that are making their first overall debut. How about a guy like Jack Walls back here in the 10th position, trying to hold off Yari Brewpocker and company for that final spot inside of the top 10. Been a very quiet day, and a lot of times that's not a bad thing when you consider a long race like this.
That's the thing where typically the Indy 500 brings a lot of different people. And what I mean by a lot of different people, we bring a lot of different people from various disciplines who have heard about the Indy 500, maybe want to try it, whether it be in the official iRacing 5 or Indy 500, or something as simple as, hey, I just want to try this for myself. I think it'll be fun. And it'll bring guys saying, hey, I have no experience in this IndyCar. I want to learn. I think it'll be a fun event. And they'll use this event to slowly learn, oh, so this is how the IndyCar drives on an oval. This is how it feels. This is so much different from what I'm used to. To road guys who may have never even touched ovals saying, man, I want to go race this. To, hey, they're the Indy ringers, and they come in and say, man, I love this car. This is all I do here.
When we had that first round of green flag pit stops, mentioned that Justin Newcombe had taken his faster pair on at that point in time. With the heavy impact, we saw him take the inside wall off of turn 2. Looks like Newcombe may be the first retiree of today's event. He'll finish in the 25th position. Eric Peterson down pit road in the 36. We showed you Ryan Mullis a couple of laps ago coming down pit road also. So we're getting into that vicinity where pit road's getting ready to play its part once more. Gary Corley is in this lap as well in the 7. And here come the 2 race leaders, Forsythe and Rick Ravon, going to come down together. I'll turn the race lead over to Henry Bennett. I believe this will be Bennett's first lap led here today, despite the fact he's been up inside the top 5 the entirety of this race. Got some other drivers coming down this time. Also, Matt Wagner, Jeff Heisong, Yari Brewpocker, and Alex Coates. All going to come down pit road on lap 88. Nick Degroot, Henry Bennett, Charles Teed, your top 3. We'll see amongst them who's going to come down pit road this time.
Here's a name that we really haven't talked about today, Sebastian Kinder. And I'm kind of looking at him, and I'm seeing consistently he's having really the best fuel economy and fuel strategy out of everyone in this field. And it's a little eye-opening. And I'm wondering if he can possibly steal this thing off of fuel strategy.
Right now, unofficially in the 4th position, he was 11th when the green flag pit stops began. More drivers on pit road this lap. Jack Walls, Thaddeus McMurray, Joe McAdory, and Jason Hand coming down to the attention of their crews. And this is so interesting. You talked about that big reset button as here comes Degroot and Henry Bennett. On the first round of green flag pit stops, Degroot was one of the first ones on pit road. Matt Wagner was one of the last. Oh, we hit that reset button, and on this cycle of pit stops, Wagner was one of the first, and Degroot's going to be one of the last.
And that's going to be the big thing where it lets you change your strategy because, hey, you may have committed to a strategy earlier on. I noticed your competitors, hey, they're doing something completely different, and it looks like, uh-oh, they're working. Well, with that caution, you can finally say, okay, we're not going to try our weird strategy anymore. We're going to try to stick to what they're doing and see if we can copy what they're doing.
Well, you talked about Sebastian Kinder having a solid outing. He was on pit road along with Bennett, Degroot, and also James Watson. Here comes Charles Teed. Oh, locked him up! And he's going to loop it around on pit road.
Oh, that's a nose cone off of it. And that's kind of adds insult to injury.
Of course, as well, with having the pit wall between pit road itself and the racetrack, it's not that wide of an opportunity to be able to make a 3-point turn and spin that thing back around. Oh, you can see there's suspension problems there. Car's not one to turn
I've got
left.
something even worse for you. I think he got hit for speeding on pit road because it looks like he slid through the line at about 70, and it took about 2-3 pit boxes before he finally slowed down under 60.
Having such a strong run here today up inside of the top 5, and now he's going to spend the second half of this race trying to mount some kind of a comeback as up at the front got a group of 4, Forsythe, Ravon, Bennett, and Degroot. It's quite a ways back before you get to AJ Hobson leading group number 2. You saw Joseph Morales was on pit lane. That should complete the cycle of green flag pit stops. We do have one driver that is quite a bit off sequence with everybody else. I'm not exactly sure how this happened, but Gail Brooks in the 71 running in the 6th position is about 5 laps away from when he's going to have to make a pit stop. So I don't know at what point we ended up having the 71 so far off sequence with everybody else, but that might be something to keep an eye on towards the closing stages.
I just noticed just an update on Charles Teed. Did double check. He did not receive a speeding penalty. Obviously, running P16 right now, not the best outcome. But hey, it could be a lot worse. He could have been sitting on pit road, lost multiple laps. So hey, take what you can get.
Absolutely, as he ended up taking on his faster pair. He has returned back to the racetrack and currently is still being scored on the lead lap in the 16th position. So good news that he did not lose a lap after spending quite a bit of time having to try to get that thing turned back around.
Looks like Jim Herrick's coming down pit road. Not exactly sure why. He pitted just about 4 or 5 laps ago. And right now, it looks like he's coasting in the pit road. Could this be another one of those drivers that maybe didn't fill up the car fully?
Looks like it could be. That's looking very similar to what we saw happen earlier on this race
weird.
with Mike Gibson and Joseph Morales. Well, actually, no.
He cut it back
powered
on.
Back up, yeah.
Weird. Oh, it looks like there is internet connection issues because he just dropped out of the session. So, definitely not. There has not been a good day for mechanical failures, has it?
No, absolutely not. But that's a thing too about a race as long as this. Not only wear and tear on the driver, but wear and tear on the race cars as well.
I gotta think that is such a heartbreak to get this far into the event, almost halfway into the event, and you finally start having internet issues, or hey, your computer finally maybe just freezes for a second. That is just heartbreaking.
Alec Coates is dealing with some connection problems here as well. He reappears in the 9th position, but he was gone for a brief moment there. My telemetry was showing him all the way down in 16th, and he shot back up there. So we're starting to see a couple of drivers dealing with some problems here, heading towards the midway point of this race.
You've got to be so careful with that, because if you blink out at the wrong time, and let's say you blink out right before you cross the finish line, and you don't blink back in until you get to about turn 1, iRacing can conveniently not score you on that lap. So you could be automatically a lap down just because it didn't detect you going over the start-finish line.
Well, our second round of green flag pit stops are officially done. There's Gale Brooks heading on to pit lane. Mentioned the fact that he was way off sequence with everybody else. We're going to have 19 cars on the lead lap at this point in time. We have 23 drivers that are still running on the track, and Eric Schaus is still in the free pass position. There you see him back there with AJ Hobson, 6th car in this lead draft line. Looking at the faster pairs as well, I did notice that Gale Brooks, who we saw on pit road, he's taken on a faster pair, and also another driver that's taken on a faster pair that I don't think we documented was the 49 of Yari Brewpocker. So we're starting to pile up drivers that are not going to have that mulligan available to them for the second half of this race, and we've seen it week after week. Doesn't matter if it's a short track, if it's a road course, if it's a speedway or a super speedway, if you will, like Auto Club or Michigan. You want to have that mulligan available, especially if there's a late race caution, because we know the cautions breed cautions, and by the end of the night, we could end up having a lot of torn up race cars.
Well, it makes you more bold, where you're willing to take a little bit more risks if you have that faster pair. Not saying you're going to force it in and possibly wreck the car, but no, it makes you bolder, saying, hey, if this all doesn't work out, at least I'll still have the faster pair to bail me out. But not having that faster pair, that makes it a little bit more tedious, where, hey, I want to do this move, but man, I need to finish this race.
Well, right now, we've got the battle within the battle. We have 4 drivers up in this lead pack that have pretty much comprised the top 4 the entirety of this race. Rick Ravon and Henry Bennett, they're out trophy hunting. They are making for Henry Bennett his first start of the season, for Rick Ravon his 5th start on the year, and looking for his 3rd victory. For Forsythe and Nick Degroot, maybe they aren't, but we're certainly focused on the championship battle that these two could have in next week's race, the season finale at Iowa. But you look at the last 2 races where we've had double points, the sister tracks of Auto Club and Michigan. It's kind of been a back and forth between Forsythe and Nick Degroot. Forsythe dominated the Auto Club race, ran into a pit road miscue, and Nick Degroot on pit strategy went on to win that race. But last week at Michigan, Degroot finished runner-up to Forsythe. So it just kind of seems like these are 2 that you see up there at the front in these double points races. They can't seem to get away from each other.
And you got to think, this is a big opportunity for Forsythe. Like you mentioned, Forsythe can easily walk away with this if Degroot has any issues this race. So it's really going to be very meaningful if Degroot has an issue and Forsythe really goes up there in the top 3 and dominates.
And it's interesting if you kind of look as well, if it were 1 point per position type racing, and right now we would say, well, Nick Degroot's got this thing wrapped up. Forsythe doesn't have a prayer. But with Forsythe running in 2nd place right now, he would be in line if the race were to end at this point in time, bonus points notwithstanding. He would get 40 race points, double that to 80 race points. With Nick Degroot running in 4th, he'd get 32, double that to 64. That's 16 points difference right there. So, amazingly enough, 2 positions can be over 15 points difference in the point standings, the way that the point system works here.
I'd say, definitely he wants to go out there, get that race win, and hope that Nick Degroot hopefully finishes outside of the top 10, or even in the top 10, but definitely down by 8th, 9th, 10th place.
You brought up as well earlier on in the broadcast about, if you win this race, you have 0 incident points, you get a custom die cast. Well, the no incidents points are even important even if you don't win this race, because that's 3 bonus points you get if you end up with a 0x by the end of the day.
And it gets doubled. So you got 6
Exactly.
points. So those little things, even like leading the most laps, those little things definitely help.
Saw Eric Schaus, the bright green 72, heading to pit road. So that lucky dog position keeps swapping, it seems, every 30 laps or so. Peterson now going to take his turn again as the first car 1 lap down. When he comes to pit road, Schaus will probably take it back. So those two right now, obviously they can not really have much of a hand in when they can come to pit road. They stretch as far as they possibly can, but all going to come down to timing between those two as to when the next caution, if the next caution falls.
It's kind of one of the glorified waiting games almost, it seems. Because you have to wait and continue waiting and hope for that big break.
Now, one thing that I have noticed has completely changed from the first 100 laps of this race. We're not seeing a lot of passing for position amongst our top 4. They are actually running single file with each other here. Forsythe, more than content to let Rayvon be out in front. Bennett there in the 3rd position, Degroot in 4th. We're not seeing the swapping back and forth, the slingshots being made here like we saw in the early stages. Are we in fuel conservation mode now if you're second on back through 4th?
Pretty much. It's going to be one of those fuel mileage races where we're just trying to get to the end, or we're just trying to make sure our fuel strategy is solid.
These drivers are about 15 laps into this run. So we've got at least 2 more pit stops in the future of these drivers, maybe a 3rd. I'm trying to see if I can work the calculators here. I think, based off the numbers I'm looking at right now, I think they're going to have to make 3 more pit stops, and that 3rd and final pit stop is going to be somewhere in the 15 to go vicinity. So that talk about a money stop.
And that's going to be the big thing where you have to hit all these pit stops, even more than usual. Where typically when we get down to that last 60 laps, that's when the stops that, hey, if there's a mistake made, we can't get that back. Where if we have a stop maybe with 40 laps early in the race, 40, 50 laps into the race, if we have a mistake, we can claw that back. It looks like there may have been an issue with Ryan, or with Mullis, actually, with Ryan Mullis. I think he got a little bit loose out of 2, and we almost clobbered the wall out of 2, managed to pull it back, but lost a few positions out of it.
Running last car on the lead lap at this point in time, and you can see there's going to be some traffic for the leaders to have to deal with. The aforementioned Mullis. You also have Gale Brooks and AJ Hobson not that far ahead as well, so traffic about to come into play for our race leaders.
One of those fun points where, again, I know you're tired of hearing about it, but it's wait and see mode, and just hoping that, hey, we got our strategy. It's ready to go to the end of the race. Here's our plan, but we're always ready for that caution. We're always ready to change our strategy on the fly.
Riding on board with race leader Rick Rayvon. Watch that left front tire. Doesn't even get it down to that white line, giving it about 3 feet from the white line, making sure that thing doesn't get loose. Because obviously, 19 laps on those Firestones, the grip's going to start to go away. Car's going to get a little bit more slippy slidey, and you don't want to get the tires down on the paint, push up the racetrack, not only lose a position, but lose a lot of momentum and drop all the way back to the tail of this pack, maybe even lose this lead group.
I need to contact Firestone, see if you can trademark Slippy Slidey.
I don't think they'd allow that. Henry Bennett's dropped back to 4th. He was running in 3rd, and now he has kind of gapped himself up to Nick Degroot, so that says to me that's not fuel conservation, that's ultra fuel conservation for the 007.
Yeah, that could be fuel conservation, or he's just trying to see if he can make that giant run. This is one of those points in the race where you're really starting to practice and see how quickly you can get up to the front of the field if kind of you're running your last lap scenarios here, where you're trying to make that last lap run. Now, even if he is trying to ultra fuel save, I don't know if I'd be that far off of Nick Degroot there. I think I'd be a little bit more tucked up so I can get more advantage of the draft.
He is going to draft back up to Nick Degroot, so the top 4 all go single file again. Let's drop back just outside of the top 5, because that's where the 5th place battle is going on. Jeff Heisong and Matt Wagner. Now these two, if I'm not mistaken, they are teammates. And no, they are not. Never mind. But I have. Well, the reason I thought that they were teammates at first glance was because they've basically been working with each other all race long. If it's not Wagner behind Highsong, it's been Highsong behind Wagner. They've come down pit road on the same lap on both the cycle green flag pit stop. So these two have got some kind of an alliance worked out here. Unfortunately, they're just not up in that lead pack, but a lot could change between now and the end.
I think that's really because of the really kind of cooperation. So I'm currently looking down at Area 51 Racing Chat. I currently look down there and I see Gail Brooks, Jeff Highsong, Matt Wagner. And I'm kind of seeing a lot of these guys don't have a lot of their normal teammates. Like Gail Brooks typically has Jim Brooks right next to him. Well, they're not, neither of them they don't have Jim Brooks today. So Gail Brooks needed to find more friends today. And I just kind of see that all throughout the field where a lot of guys are teaming up with people maybe we're not used to. But hey, if they're willing to talk to me, they're kind of friendly to me, I think they're willing to help me out in the strategy because they also need my help too.
Yeah, I mean, much like in a super speedway race, you need to have those allies. You need to be able to have friends with team communication to come down pit road with you, help you be able to have a group when you leave pit lane. And not only that, too, you know, you consider a lot of those names you were just talking about all working together. They know each other from races this season. They're familiar with the racing style, even if they are not teammates. And so it's really helpful to be able to bounce information off of one of each other.
And just a person that you trust, where they'll tell you something and they're not trying to tell you it to get you to maybe change your fuel strategy so they can win the race. It's, hey, we're trying to do this as a team, or at least right now we want to make it to the end of the race, and how we're going to make it to the end of the race is that all of us work together so we can try to attack at the front.
We have 93 laps to go. We know there's at least a couple, maybe 3 pit stops still in the future for these drivers. Now, we've basically been focused for most of the day on our top 4, Rayvon, Forsythe, Nick Degroot, and Henry Bennett. But remember I mentioned the fact as well that the driver in the last 3 seasons that's led the most laps has not gone on to win the race. In fact, we've actually seen 2 out of the 3 last seasons drivers that were outside of the top 5 be able to win the race. So you looking at anybody back here inside the top 10, even outside the top 10, that we might not want to count out just yet, that we could see play some kind of strategy or even with a caution have a strong enough car to get up here to the front and kind of be a spoiler for these top 4.
The 2 I've got my eyes on here really at the moment is both Charles Teed, obviously for decent reasons. Obviously, he is a fast repaired down. But we do know he is fast. It's just a matter of him climbing his way back up the field. But another one that I was mentioning earlier, Sebastian Kinder. That's they got Super Seb over here, and I think he could probably claw his way up this field, and I think he might surprise us.
2 guys that I've noticed have been able to make some pretty good comebacks here, and it's not an easy race to do so. Yari Brewpocker right now in that 8th spot. We saw him up towards the front and get into the wall. Granted, he was on a different pit strategy, but he is up inside the top 10 still. And Alec Coates, even though he has been dealing with a little bit of internet problems for the last half hour or so, right now solidly in that 7th position, and he's been putting down some very consistent lap times as well. He's been right there with Matt Wagner and Jeff Highsong just outside of the top 5. So I think that these are a couple of guys just based on speed alone. If we get ourselves a late race yellow, they could definitely have strong enough race cars to get up here and contend with the top 4.
Yeah, Yari Brewpocker definitely scares me a little bit, just of how much he's ended up gaining on all the pit stops. Even with the early race troubles, this is what I really mean by someone being able to claw their way back up into the main part of the race, and all they need is just maybe a caution or 2, and they'll just reset. It'll be good to go.
Well, folks, if you're just joining us, we are more than halfway through the Season 5 Dark Horse 500, presented by Troy Lee Designs. It's the penultimate race this season for the Dark Horse Racing Series. The champion will be decided this coming Wednesday night at Iowa Speedway, but this is undoubtedly the biggest race of the season for these Dark Horse drivers. I'm Seth Cole alongside of Matthew Rodriguez with less than 90 to go, and pit stops beginning here for our 3rd round of green flag pit stops. Rick Rayvon coming down pit lane. We've got 18 drivers on the lead lap, 23 of our original 25 still running. 2 drivers in the garage area, Jim Herrick and Justin Newcombe, as I think Rick Rayvon coming down pit road as early as he is, that's a result of he was creating the draft for all these guys. He was using up the most fuel. Everybody else gets to stay out a couple extra laps.
So I'll go ahead and I'll throw it to you here where you see the leader come down pit road. Is your immediate reaction to follow the leader down, or do you try to stay out? Where if you stay out, you're kind of at risk of an undercut from the leader, but if you pit with the leader, you're kind of following his strategy. You're not really going to gain any time on that.
If you pit with the leader, especially when you've got a 3-on-1 here, then he's going to be with that lead group when everything cycles around. You've got a chance, if you're Forsythe, Bennett, and Nick Degroot, to make a couple more laps, keep it single file, try and generate a little bit more speed than you think that Rick Ravon would when he comes off of pit lane, and maybe leave him in the dust and make it just a 3-car pack for the race lead when everything cycles around.
Definitely kind of a strategy. It's kind of one of those things where you want to kind of pit before the leader, trying to get that undercut, and hopefully you can use those new tires and use that a little bit of advantage of maybe just getting on and off pit road quicker than the leader, and hopefully you come down with someone to get a little bit of an advantage. But it's kind of one of those double-edged swords where if I come down earlier, I'm not going to have that great of fuel numbers, where if I'm really on my edge of I don't really know if I'm going to make this, I want to come in later. But if I come in later, it kind of funnels into one of those strategies. This is why every team needs one of those crew chief types that thinks of all this.
Just one less thing the driver has to think about. I agree with you on that. We got more drivers that hit pit lane the lap before. Matt Wagner, Alec Coates, Yari Brewpocker, Gary Corley, Joe McAdory, Thaddeus McMurray, and James Watson. Looking there at Jeff Highsong on pit road this time. He also came down with Jack Walls in the 83. It's like Craig Forsythe down this time in the 27.
And Forsythe looks like he might be all alone, which it's not the greatest strategy, but you got to see who you come out of with, or who comes out with you on pit road, and hopefully you can just slide into one of those packs and just drive away.
Forsythe has been really fast this season. He's been in the conversation for victories week after week. He's been to victory lane 3 times this season. The one thing that has seemed to be his Achilles heel, especially at the faster racetracks, has been pit road. So far, so good in his execution here today.
And I'm definitely noticing, even though he is having a better day of luck on pit road, he's not pushing pit road entry and pit road exit as far as he can, or as fast as he can. He's not pushing it to that edge that I see other drivers pushing it. And that's a good thing and a bad thing, where it's a good thing where you're not on your edge. You're not constantly thinking, am I getting a pit road penalty? You don't have that in the back of your head. But it's always, hey, those other drivers, they are beating you on pit road. And those little fractions of a second make so much of a difference.
Do you think maybe being just a tiny bit conservative on pit road is him having that little voice in the back of his mind of, hey, this is still a points race. You still got a shot for the championship. Don't make a mistake by overextending yourself.
And see, that's one of those things where it kind of comes into mind of those little changes that you make to preserve points. They change how you race, and it can be a good thing where it changes a bad strategy to a good strategy. Let's use an example of Joey Chapman from the SS series. Joey Chapman changed his strategy. He kept getting involved in wrecks. Hey, change your strategy. Now he's competing for wins. It's kind of one of those things where that strategy change, for some people, it works extremely well. But for other people, when they change your strategy, it could also go very badly. So I think only time's going to tell.
Bennett and Degroot, that's, I believe, the second drag race these two have had to the commitment line. They had the same kind of drag race side by side last round of green flag pit stops, but could be Bennett over Degroot to the commitment line this time. Should exchange the lead over to Craig Forsythe, who I thought with those 3 staying out that they were going to shake Rick Ravon. That's not the case, because right now, 27 versus 1, that could be your battle for the race lead once everything cycles around.
Ravon tried his best to try and shake Forsythe, but Forsythe just hung with him and obviously got that draft, and slowly those two, I think it's really going to come down to a battle between those two at the end of the race.
Well, Rick Ravon still looking for his first Dark Horse 500. Craig Forsythe looking for his second. Matter of fact, back when he won the Dark Horse 500 in Season 2, he was a part-time driver, only had a handful of starts. He was not running full-time, so you could hear the elation in his voice as a one-off driver, if you will, in that race, being able to take that checkered flag. We've, of course, seen him this season be really good as a full-time driver in the conversation for the championship. And he and Rick Ravon now have their sights set on the duo of Henry Bennett and Nick Degroot. We're about to have that four-way battle for the top position once again. And these laps, they are ticking away. We've only had the caution fly here today, a total of 3 times, actually 2 times, correction. And so with all these green flag laps, these drivers have really been putting a pretty blistering pace here in this Dark Horse 500. We are almost 3/4 of the way through this race in the next 30 laps or so. So really tremendous credit to these drivers for keeping it clean, and it just keeps throwing up more question marks as far as the strategy now down the home stretch.
Now, Seb, I'm sure you've seen the meme of how the length of these races go, where it's the first 80% of the race goes through in just a snap of your fingers, but the last 20 laps, that is the longest period of this race. Where drivers who want this thing to end, they will be just counting the minutes it takes for this race to end. But for the leaders, it will go by so slowly.
It's a long race for these drivers. Obviously, they're going to be exhausted physically, but also you brought up about, trying to figure out pit strategy as a driver while you're also trying to make moves. You're trying to figure out your car's strengths and weaknesses in comparison to drivers around you. Well, yeah, you just talked about the possibility of being in this long green flag run, seeing a caution come out, and then having restart after restart. That's got to be taxing mentally on a driver as well, because you're completely 180ing your strategy from the first 3/4 of the race.
We were talking about being physically and mentally exhausted. I was talking with some of these drivers pre-race, and they're running their force feedback at 16%. Now, to give some context, most sim racers, they'll run their force feedback probably about 2 to 6%. So this car is physically beating them up every single corner. And hey, for maybe about 80 laps, that's fine. But when you finally do the whole 200 laps, man, that hurts. And you are just exhausted by the end of it.
Henry Bennett, we saw him kind of trailing the top 4 just prior to the pit stops. He now is out in front leading this race over Nick Degroot, Rick Ravon, and Craig Forsythe. AJ Hobson doing a great job there in that 63 car. He is obviously, as we've mentioned, off pit sequence, but still up there inside of the top 5. He's got Eric Schaus there with him. Schaus is back up to the free pass position should we get a yellow flag. We did have a couple of other drivers, should mention as well, that lost some laps here under that green flag pit stop. Jason Hand has gone a lap down. Ryan Mullis has gone a lap down. Jack Walsh has gone a lap down. I believe he might have gotten hit with a speeding penalty. He was running up inside of the top 10 prior to the pit stops, and now he is 1 lap down all the way back in 21st.
That'd be correct. Looks like the speeding police did catch him, and unfortunately that ticket is served at 45 seconds.
Dale Brooks on pit lane. We've already documented that he is off pit sequence with everybody else. So now, if my calculations are correct, these drivers still have 2 more pit stops to go, but looking there with Gale Brooks coming to pit lane this time. Gale Brooks, ooh, that's a big ask. Would have to make, about 33, 34 laps on a tank of fuel here to be able to make the rest of the way.
I saw 32 successful. Only 33 successful by coming on pit road at that 33 mark. I don't know. That's going to be extremely tight.
If it was a short tracker somewhere with a lot of lifting, then that might be plausible, but this is a flat-out racetrack. There is no lift. There's no opportunity to coast, to clutch, to save fuel. If you do that, you're going to just lose so much time that the time you would gain with staying out, basically, it would kind of just equal out.
Honestly, they could try and see if they can shake it up. If you could possibly have the chance to cut out a pit stop or even really push your fuel number, you could try and possibly coast to a victory or even at worst coast to a top 5. Now, for someone like Craig Forsythe or kind of our upper higher in points, that may be an advisable outcome. But for some of our guys who are out of the championship picture, even those who are just coming in for this one event, that's the kind of crowd that, I wouldn't want to take those chances. I want to go win this race.
Riding on board with Matt Wagner, you just saw him lose the 6th position to Yari Brewpocker. Wagner going to stay in 5th gear. Now he shifts up to 6th gear coming off of turn number 4 as he'll get the run there on Brewpocker. So it kind of looks like if you're out in clean air, you're running it in 5th gear. As soon as you drop back into somebody's draft and start to generate a run, you shift it up to 6th gear. So interesting there that these guys do not just stay in 6th gear the entirety of this race.
It's kind of one of those things where I feel personally like 5th gear gives me a little bit of extra power off the corners. But the 6th gear will allow you to reach that higher speed. And obviously the 6th gear will help you stay in that more fuel economy mode. So it's kind of a trade-off here.
Looks like Jim Herrick has returned back onto the racing grid. He is on pit lane, getting some damage repaired, obviously. Had already used his fast repairs, so we'll see if he's able to go out there and log some laps before the conclusion of this race. AJ Hobson comes to pit road in the 63 for, I think it's going to be his first of 2 pit stops before the conclusion of this race. He'd be right on the edge there, too, of being able to make it on one more pit stop as Nick Degroot continues to show the way. Closing in on 70 laps to go here in the Season 5 Dark Horse 500. Presented by Troy Lee Designs. Will pit road be the deciding factor here today? Will a late race caution punch these drivers up and be the X factor? We can't wait to find out. Closing stages of this race coming up. You're not going to miss a thing as we step aside for a commercial break and go FRN side by side.
Welcome, race fans. This is Paul Page, the voice of IndyCars. And today we're excited to present another IndyCar event brought to you by the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. From the Unzers to Mears, Foyt, and Andretti, now it's Corley, Peterson, Davies, Gardner, and Team. You can expect high speeds, incredible wheel-to-wheel action, and intense drama that you could only get in an IndyCar. So sit back and enjoy your favorite drivers from all over the world take the track. Dark Horse IndyCar drivers, start your engine. Welcome, race fans. This is Paul Page, the voice of IndyCars. And today we're excited to present another IndyCar event brought to you by the Dark Horse IndyCar Series.
Well, we need to stop going to commercial breaks because the caution is out again. Ryan Mullis has had an issue, bringing out caution number 3 with about 70 laps, a little under 70 laps remaining.
I think the same thing happened to Ryan Mullis as it did Justin Newcombe, where honestly they just got their tires right below that white line, almost attacking the grass, and just barely unsettled the back of the car. And then the fight began to save it, and at that point, it was no saving it.
It's interesting when I talk to drivers at tracks like Michigan and Auto Club, they talk about how the car will continually get lighter as the fuel cell starts to empty. Does that play a part into this as well, do you think?
Partly, but I feel there's more to it. I don't really know how, though.
Big hit there for Ryan Mullis in the 9 car. Mullis had not used his fast repair prior to this, so he will be able to take the fast repair on, return back to the racetrack, albeit he had to get towed to his pit stall, so he's going to lose quite a number of laps here as a result. Boy, I think that was just before the safer barrier too, so pretty heavy impact with the front nose of his machine, and I don't know, Matt. Did you tempt fate talking about the fact that beginning stages of the race fly by and then the closing stages just creep along? Is this where we start to get to the cautions breed cautions?
All I know is there's one person who is really just dancing in his seat. Has to be Yari Brewpocker. Top 5 gets that caution that he has been waiting for. Same thing for Sebastian Kinder and Charles T. We're getting that caution they have waited for.
This caution helps AJ Hobson and Gale Brooks, who were off pit sequence, get back on the same sequence with everybody else, and they were on the lead lap at the timing of the caution. And Jason Hand appears to be the driver that would receive the lucky dog under this yellow flag, putting 17 drivers back on the lead lap. We could also have some drivers take the wave around here. A few of them are eligible, including Schaus, Peterson, and Jack Walls. We'll follow up on that as everybody on pit lane, with the exception of AJ Hobson, and Henry Bennett wins the battle off pit lane.
Looking at the front of the field, don't think there should be two cars, or I believe 3 cars that should be getting a wave around. No, my apologies, 4 cars that are getting a wave around. Should be Eric Schaus, Joseph Morales, Jack Walls, and Mike Gibson. They will all be receiving a wave around. That's partially very good for the Mike Gibson and my apologies, Jack Welps. And I think Eric Schaus is finally back on the lead lap, so I believe he can actually fight for it too. But is it too little, too late?
It's going to be the big question, right? You kind of look at the timing of this caution as well. We're going to be going back green flag racing with less than 70 to go. We're going to be actually closer to the 60 laps to go vicinity when those lights finally do go out. According to the calculations I've got right now, with the drivers that came to pit lane, they could go as far as lap 170. They can make it on one more pit stop. I even think AJ Hobson here, if he can save enough under pacing, even though he's about 6 laps shorter on fuel than everybody else behind him, I think he can make it. So we've really only got one more pit stop that these drivers absolutely have to make it to the conclusion.
That's the thing is, when do you want to make that pit stop, and at what point is it feasible, and if you can get an advantage out of it? Obviously, I don't believe any of these cars are going to be taking tires on that last pit stop. It's just going to be a fuel and go. But how much fuel do you need to make it to that end? Do you need a full can? Can you kind of maybe get away with a little bit less? That is going to be the big question.
Think we got enough time to get inside the mind of one of our drivers, find out what their strategy is for this run?
Get back to me on that.
Okay. So Hobson's going to be the leader as we get ready to go back green. Henry Bennett will be second, Nick Degroot in third, Rick Ravon fourth, and Craig Forsythe in fifth. Yari Brewpocker will be sixth, seventh, Jeff Hysong, Alex Coates in eighth, Matt Wagner ninth. He lost a couple of spots, did Wagner on pit road, and Sebastian Kinder will complete the top 10. Charles Teed is in 11th, Gary Corley 12th, James Watson 13th, Joe McAdory is still on the lead lap in 14th, Thaddeus McMurray, he's in 15th. Jason Hand got the lucky dog. He'll be 16th. Gale Brooks in 17th. 18th, Jack Walls. Eric Schaus in 19th. Those two took the wave around. 19 drivers on the lead lap. We've got a total of 23 drivers that are still running at this point in time.
Every one of those drivers are ready to jump all over and hopefully kind of steal this race. AJ Hobson, Henry Bennett, Degroot, Ravon, and Forsythe. Yari Brewpocker, Hysong, Cotes, I believe Coates, Wagner, Kinder, and Teed fill out the top 11. Who out of his top 11 are you really picking? I'm kind of curious.
I'm looking at the 49. 49 has had just such tremendous speed. Granted, had to overcome getting into the wall, take on a faster pair, but just it seems like every time that a green flag pit stop cycle is completed or a restart takes place, he's up 2 or 3 spots from where I saw him previously.
I will admit, I think at the moment I'm taking Henry Bennett just because there's only so many times you can finish second before you realize how to win one of these things.
Well, he is second right now to AJ Hobson, but he and Nick Degroot might be able to get a little 2-car tandem going here down the back straight with real Hobson and really quick. There you see Hobson realizing the same thing, trying to snake his way down the back stretch, cut the draft But here comes Bennett with a full head of steam. Where is he going to take it? Will he go top? Will he go bottom? He'll ride in line for the moment. Rick Ravon joined the party as well. 4 cars up in the lead pack.
Looking further back in the field, Forsythe and Yari Brewpocker now going side by side. But really, it's a gap to 7th place.
That's something that we've kind of seen in the past as well, right? It kind of seems that with the control car choosing where to accelerate, there tends to be a little bit of a stack up from 6th place on back. So it's kind of seemed to be a trend season after season.
And I really have to ask, when is kind of push going to come to shove, and you're going to see a lot of people start making these kind of really pushy moves trying to get ahead of people? I think if we don't see it sooner than later, I'd say with about 10 to go, you're going to see no give and take. It's going to be all sins.
Yeah, I think that definitely as we start to draw closer to that final potential green flag pit stop, that's when you're going to start to see drivers kind of force the issue, because we've now entered into the mode where you are setting yourself up for that final pit stop, and moves that you make now to the pit stop could be just as important to you winning the race as from the pit stop to the checkered flag.
So let's try to run the calculators here just for a minute. So let me use my high school education math so I can kind of run this race in reverse. So 203 laps. So let's minus the 141. So we've got 62 laps to the finish. We're currently, most of these guys are on about a 4-lap stint with the exception of AJ Hobson. So these cars can still go for an additional 26, 27-ish laps. I'll say 26 to be on the safe side. That leaves 36 laps that they need to make. Assuming that these cars can get that full magical 32 laps of fuel, that puts us at 34. You're 2 laps short. So, what's the play here?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'll tell you what, my jaw is on the floor. It's not due to your math skills, but due to the fact that we just saw Yari Brewpocker pass 4 cars from the front straightaway to turn 1. Oh, car in the wall! Rick Ravon off of turn 4.
Looks like he might be a little bit hurt in the side pod, but I don't believe it's anything too bad. Actually, no, I looked at the side of the car. It looks like it's all good. I don't see any damage on him.
He hit it pretty square, so he might have dodged a bullet there.
Might have just knocked the toe out of it.
Yeah, I think that's might have been what happened. It's obviously lost in momentum, but you can see he's drafted right back up to Craig Forsythe, and oh boy, yep, the moves are being made. That power move by Brewpocker. Bennett now to the inside of AJ Hobson. These drivers getting antsy. How about some of these other guys now up in the mix? You've got Matt Wagner, Alec Coates, Jeff Heisong. They're all in the mix. Charles T still got a shot. He's leading group number 2, and they're only about 6 car lengths off the back bumper. I believe that is the lucky dog positioned car of Eric Peterson.
I wonder if the reason that Yari Brewpocker really started I guess just marching up the field is because he realizes the same thing we realized, that I don't think anyone can make it on one more stop. I think it's going to be one more stop and then a splash and go, and hopefully you'll make it to the end.
Now, is it worth doing tires on that last pit stop? Obviously, I would assume you'd have to make a full run. Is it worth spending the time putting on the tires?
Not a chance. I would just take the fuel and go. In my mind, there is no reason I should be stopping and taking tires, because even if at that point I'd just be waiting on tires on that last pit stop. Even with this upcoming pit stop, I can probably get away with maybe about a 6 second pit stop if I just take fuel only. Or if I'm waiting on tires, I got to wait about 8 to 9 seconds. So at that point, I think it's more of a disadvantage for me to take tires. If I took tires on the last pit stop, there is no marketable gain that I think I'll get out of this.
Well, Matt Wagner holds the record for the driver to win a Dark Horse 500 by leading the least amount of laps, 4 laps led in his victory back in Season 3. He's yet, at least to my knowledge, to have led a lap here today as he rides in that 7th position, so maybe a little bit of deja vu for that driver. Just behind Rick Ravon. And just ahead of them, Nick Degroot, who I believe he has the record for most laps led in a Dark Horse 500 that he won. And that was only 16 laps that he led.
Realistically, there's like 2 different battles going on here, where there's the battle for the race and the battle for the championship. And just looking at Craig Forsythe and Nick Degroot, they can't get away from each other.
I don't think they've been any further than 3 positions apart from each other this entire race. And that's with the green flag pit stops thrown in as well. AJ Hobson, though, continuing to show the way. He's had a strong race car here today. He's had to play a little bit of pit strategy to get him track position in the early stages, but since then, he's done a great job of maintaining. And that last caution, I think, really helped him to be able to still be in the conversation for this race victory, because if we'd continued on the way that we were going, while most of these other drivers would have had to only make 2 trips to pit road, he probably would have had to make 3, including that pit stop you're talking about, all these drivers still having to make around the below 5 to go mark.
Now, don't get me wrong from what I'm saying here, and my really awful math here. I'm not saying that they can't possibly, or I guess I'm kind of am saying they can't possibly make it on one stop alone. However, more or less what I'm saying is someone could make it on that one stop, but they'd be going almost half speed, where I don't think it would be much of an advantage. However, there is still an advantage to saving fuel, because assuming that you get that kind of the mythical 32 laps of fuel, which right now I can guarantee you AJ Hobson's not getting. AJ Hobson's not getting that 32 laps of fuel here at the moment. You would still need to make 34 laps after that mythical 32 lap run. So taking the 32 lap run out of it, you eventually have to make another pit stop. Let's say you only make it to 30. So you've got 36 laps to go. Let's say you run another 30, so you got to pit with 6 to go. Now, the 83 is running a different strategy here. The 83 looks like he's coming in the pit road this time.
Obviously, these drivers have different things that they can look at as far as the fuel number, as far as just how much fuel they've got in the race car. We've seen a couple of drivers even here today run out of fuel and not be able to make it back around to their pit stall. They've had to call for the tow. Is there a way as a driver that you can look at the numbers, watch as the fuel is decreasing, and project in your head, hey, if I am able to get to turn 3 at this number, that's when it will run out of fuel. I'll have enough momentum to get back to the start finish line. I mean, can you predict just based off the numbers the area of the racetrack where that car is going to run out of fuel?
Some people can. Myself, in my limited knowledge, I cannot. However, I'd say you really have to use a program like, I'd say CAPS, or if you have a good calculator and working knowledge of math, better than mine, you could probably say, okay, I have let's say 7 of fuel at this part of the track. I won't make it around to this point. And you could just say, all right, if I can at least make it out of 3 and 4 on the final lap and I can just coast the rest of the way, that may be good enough.
Well, I love statistics that I can see. I'm also a person that out of high school swore I'd never do another math problem again. So, yeah, I will use your math any day of the week.
Poor skills.
Closing in on 50 laps to go. We have had only 3 cautions here today. For the most part, this race has been clean and green. Most of the drivers that started this race are still running. Majority of them still on the lead lap. 18 of the 25 that started this race are still on the lead lap. We now enter into crunch time, the final quarter of this 200 lapper. And it's, as you mentioned, it's going to come down here to when the drivers elect to make that pit stop. We've seen some drivers come down pit road as soon as 28, 29 laps into a run. We've seen other drivers be able to stretch as far as 32 laps into a run. What do you do at this point in time? What's the communication going on between teammates or drivers that are working together? We're going to start to see it all culminate. And of course, we can always speculate all this stuff. And there could be a chance that a caution comes out and completely changes the landscape all over again.
You know, in my opinion, there's really one of 2 strategies here. It's either a group of friends saying, all right, I think we've helped each other to the maximum that we could. I'll tell you when we're pitting next, but after that, we're on our own. Or it's, hey, let's try and save as much fuel as possible. Let's sit and draft a little bit. Let's try and save as much fuel. So when we have to do that final, kind of splash and go, we can take a minimal amount of fuel as possible and get back going.
you mentioned about Jack Walls coming down pit lane off sequence with everybody. He actually had to come down pit road because he took the wave around under the last caution, so he was going to be shorter on fuel than anybody else. Another driver that falls into that same category that is hoping a caution can save him would be Eric Schaus. Schaus right now is about 5 to 6 projected laps away from he'd have to come down pit road under green flag conditions, and he would more than likely lose a lap with where he is positioned right now in the 14th position.
I'm slowly, and I think you mentioned earlier, slowly seeing Charles Teed come back up, but kind of use that strategy is Charles Teed want to kind of slice and dice the field. I know it's kind of a little bit like to ask this with Gary Corley being passed, but does he really want to slice up the field right now and kind of waste the potential to save more fuel? Or is he really just trying to see how much he can gain with people trying to save fuel?
Well, it's also the thing, too, do you want to put yourself in that kind of position, battling as hard as you are for the spot at this point in time, knowing that you've already used your faster pair? I mean, we saw Yari Brewpocker battled really hard there in the opening stages of that last green flag run, working his way from 5th now up to the 2nd position, but he also is a faster pair in the hole. Last thing you want to do is mount a comeback like both Brewpocker and Teed have been able to do after their early issues, and basically take yourself out of the running just 50 laps shy of the finish.
Honestly, I'm happy I'm not driving right now, because this whole fuel strategy game is making me pull my hair out. And I can't even imagine what some of the guys on these teams are feeling of, do we have enough fuel to make it? Or we don't have enough fuel to make it. How much are we short by? And then hearing that number and hearing the, 1 to 2 laps. Oh, I think I can save 1 to 2 laps. Maybe I can lift a little bit more. I could lose a little bit of ground to 3 to 4 to 5. I'm not making that.
And let's remember, too, that it may not come down to just fuel. It may come down as well to the execution on pit road at least one more time. We've seen pit road bite a couple of people here today. Teed had an issue on entry. We saw, I believe it was Mullis, somebody got hit with a speeding penalty. It was Walls. Jack Walls got hit with a speeding penalty on pit road. So there's no saying that pit road hasn't yet played its part into the outcome of this race. Something could still happen here coming to what we would potentially be looking at as the money stop.
Well, you got to think of the massive heartbreak that could happen of you duck down pit road.
We got a car on the wall. That was Eric Peterson. He rode the wall off of turn 4. He's hit the inside retaining wall, and the caution flies as he comes back on the racing surface.
And just like that, we get into a little bit more of an interesting scenario.
Caution gonna fly. That is a huge break for Eric Schaus. He's been a lap down most of the day, took the wave around to the last caution. He will be back on the lead lap with everybody else. But Eric Peterson, who I believe was in line to be the lucky dog, he ends up being the caution instead. That's a hard hit into the outside wall. Shoots right down in front of Eric Schaus. My goodness.
Yeah, Schaus had that quick reaction to dart right back to the right. Barely missed him.
He's right in between two cars. I think the other car might have been the 60 of Joseph Morales. Watch this again. Wow.
So this makes an interesting situation. We're not totally out of the woods yet with fuel. Currently, we're at lap 158, 159, so we have 44 laps left to go. Again, if we pit right now, our fuel tank can only take us realistically, without fuel saving and actually fighting for a win, could realistically take us about 29, 30, 31 laps at a hopeful, to those who are very well fuel saving, 32 laps at maximum, which leaves us at a deficit of 13 laps, which is great and all, but how much fuel do you take for 13 laps?
Oh gosh, now you're making me do math. Appreciate it. Let's see. So go about 30 some odd laps on a tank of fuel.
The drivers will have a lot better of an idea about this because they can actually see the amount that they're burning per lap and they can accurately guess. But us here, we don't really have all those tools, so it's kind of about thinking of it would basically have to be basically a little bit less than half a tank.
Yeah. Now, another thing that I was kind of looking at here as well as a possible scenario, you're talking about how this would kind of be a 13 lap short scenario for pretty much everybody as they all hit pit road. We know that you can come down pit lane, you can get a pit stop done, and you can keep yourself on the lead lap. If we got 13 laps into this upcoming run, would you dive onto pit road knowing you could absolutely make it the rest of the way on fuel? Maybe you catch a quick caution, everybody else comes down pit lane under that caution period, you stay out, next thing you know, you're leading us back to the green as the race leader.
See, that's the dangerous portion is if you duck down pit road as early as you can make it, that's great. But if a caution comes out, you're potentially a lap down, you're stuck a lap down. Where if you wait as long as possible to come down, you risk being undercut by those guys who were brave enough to come down as early as possible, and there was no caution to, I may be at a deficit here. But you can take on less fuel, so it's kind of both plans have their pros, both plans have their cons.
This is looking like Charles Teed might be going for that unorthodox strategy of maybe stretching as far as he can, making the pit stop, trying to stay on the lead lap, and maybe having things cycle around his way. We also have to remember this as well. There's no green-white checkers in this race. So there is every possibility, much like what happened with Craig Forsythe back in Season 2, that this race could end under caution. So I know that we've got up on our screen 203 laps to the checkered flag, but for some of these guys, they could be in the mentality of, hey, if I'm able to make it to, say, lap 199, this race could end under caution. That 199 could be my checkered flag.
Like I said, I'm happy I'm not racing because this is a headache just sitting here thinking about it. It's one of those things where I can tell certain people in the field are just, please just let me drive, and some that are, honestly, I'm ready for this. Let's do it. I think I can win this off of strategy.
Well, lucky dog under that caution, Jack Walls, so he'll be back on the lead lap. 19 drivers in total will be on the same lap as the race leader. I wanted to check up on a couple of drivers that we saw have some issues there on that last green flag run, most notably the one of Rick Ravon. Saw him brush the wall off of turn 4. Came down pit road, normal pit stop, did not take on a faster pair, so apparently he is still good to go as he'll restart back in the 6th position. Also an interesting note as we draw closer to the end of this race, at this point in time, we no longer have any drivers -1 to the race leaders. The next car 1 lap down in 20th, Mike Gibson is 2 laps down, so anybody that now is not on the lead lap would need multiple cautions to get multiple lucky dogs to get back on the lead lap and back in the hunt.
See, that's what I was telling you with Mike Gibson, Joseph Morales. Those two pitted under that green flag run, hoping to possibly maybe jump the few guys in that strategy, but obviously that kind of hurt them a lot with that caution where now they are trapped those laps down.
Another driver we're going to have to keep an eye on here down the home stretch that spent most of the day up inside of the top 10, actually up inside of the top 7. That's Gale Brooks. And we know that Gale Brooks was off pit sequence with everybody else, much like AJ Hobson, but Gale did not get the benefit of the timing of the yellow flag to keep his track position. He will be all the way back in the 17th position. So we know that's a fast car. Going to have to pass quite a number of machines to get back up to where he was and be in the hunt for this victory. Still plenty of time to do it. I mean, there's still 40 laps, and we've seen what drivers have been able to do in even a 10 to 15 lap stint. So keep your eye on that 71 as he's going to try and progress his way back up through the field towards the top 10. And might not have heard the last of Eric Schaus as well. I think Eric Schaus has kind of been in preservation mode, doing everything he can to get on the lead lap. Now that he has stayed on the lead lap, you might start to see him charge back up to the front as well.
And Teed got an amazing restart, but again, you got to kind of have to figure that in the back of your head that, again, he is on a long stint. He's going to have to pit here shortly. He might be in a really bad situation.
Yeah, a lot of the big speedways we end up seeing, like Pocono, Michigan, Auto Club, you can get a good start, but you don't want to get too good a start because then second place on back reel you in, especially with the long back straightaway here. Looks like for the time being, it's going to hold court as Forsythe and Brewpocker. They're going to battle side by side for second. Actually, that's another machine. That's a lap machine in the mix there. I think that's Morales in the 60 that they just battled around.
I'm just looking through the field. I'm trying to see who might be fuel saving here. Honestly, I keep bringing up his name. Eric Schaus and Sebastian Miller, I think those two might get a little bit cheeky here, and they may have a strategy going forward.
Battle is on for the lead. Yari Brewpocker to the inside of Charles Teed. Craig Forsythe right there as well. The ways back to the battle for fourth. Rayvon Bennett, Hobson, Nick Degroot, Matt Wagner, all up each other's gearboxes.
Just looking back through the field, I'm looking at Henry Bennett. Henry Bennett, one of those guys who definitely wants to kind of take this race victory. But do you think Bennett's trying to play the fuel mileage game, or do you think he's trying to play the track position game?
I'm not sure he knows what strategy he's playing. I don't know if any of these guys know what strategy they're playing. It's so difficult. Sometimes you think they're in fuel conservation mode. The next lap, you see them make 1, 2, 3 passes for position. Bennett actually getting up to the lead of that second group. Now he's going to get passed underneath by Rick Rayvon. Another thing that I think we're going to see here as well could be, and I'm not meaning this in any way derogatory to the drivers, but just simple drivers' mistakes. They're racing hard now. There's going to be a lot more take than there is give. We saw a lot of room being given in passes for position in the early stages. Now there's going to be a lot of pinching. There's going to be a lot of side drafting, and sometimes mistakes happen. We may end up seeing a couple more cautions as a result.
Yeah, and I'm looking at Charles Teed here, and I'm not exactly sure what the strategy is. I don't know if he's just trying to stay up there and lead some laps, get some points, because I really think he needs to drop behind Yari Brewpocker, try to save as much fuel as possible, because right now he is really in a hole.
I don't think he's in fuel conservation mode. I think that right now he's going to run this thing to as far as he can, try and come down pit road, try and stay on the lead lap. I think that's the strategy call that he's got right now. I don't think that he's going to save fuel in one instance on this run. He's got about another 4 laps he could go before he absolutely has to come to pit road. That would put him at 34 laps to go. I think right now his plan, make the pit stop when he has to, stay on the lead lap, catch a caution, everybody comes down pit road, he gets to stay out, maybe save another lap or two under pacing, still have that track position as the race leader when we go back green. But again, cautions are going to have to fall in his favor.
If he can save more than 4 laps, he would be good to make it if he fuel saved at the end. But it would be extraordinarily risky.
Yari Brewpocker back up to the front. Ooh, that's, I don't know if that was just Teed making a move on Brewpocker, but it almost kind of looked a little bit like a block on the run that Rick Rayvon had in that third position.
Seeing Rayvon's been really one of the only ones who's been willing to try that high side and really stick to that high side with another driver, but it looks like he's leading the outside now.
You watch these cars, Rick Rayvon's car down that back straightaway, back and forth, anxious, wanting to make a move, kind of like a kid at Christmas. You'd think the car's unsteady, but no, that's Rick Rayvon trying to figure out, do I want to go left, do I want to go right? There's not a hold there. Well, I got to bide my time. He is able to get to the front this time, though, and lead us back to the yard of bricks. Oh, man, that was close back there between A.J. Hobson and Matt Wagner side by side for the 6th position, those two red machines.
See, as the kind of the energy starts amping up, you got to wonder, is really any place on this track safe at the moment?
Not up in this lead group, that's for sure. And you mentioned it perfectly, the energy. You can just feel it here with these drivers, and they feel it too. This is drivers trying to set themselves up potentially for the finish of this race. They know they're going to have to come to pit road at least one more time. And talked about that fuel window opening to make it the rest of the way. Would you be willing to, as soon as that window opens, dive down pit road and hope you can stay on the lead lap for the remainder of the race? We're only about 3-4 laps removed from that point. We'll see if there's going to be any takers. I'm kind of maybe looking at somebody like a Rick Rayvon or a Henry Bennett, someone to go outside the box in terms of strategy, because we know that Forsythe and Nick Degroot, drivers that are battling for the championship, they'd probably go the more conventional and run this thing as far as they can, then make that final shorter pit stop at the end.
You know, I keep watching Charles Teed here, and I keep wondering how far is he going to go, because honestly, he might have planned it perfectly. If he can manage to go a couple more laps where honestly, he can make it to the end with the rest of the field, but he's going to lose time not having anyone come down with him.
He's about to come around and complete his 33rd circuit on this set of tires, but bear in mind, he would have been able to save some fuel under the pace laps just prior to going green as Rick Rayvon cuts down right in front of Nick Degroot. That's close between those two as Bennett's going to slide around Craig Forsythe for the top position. And here comes T to pit lane.
Here's the kind of the advantage that Rick Ray Vaughn has over Nick Degroot and people like Craig Forsythe and Nick Degroot, which is he can scare him a little bit where Ray Vaughn knows that both Degroot and Forsythe are in it for the championship. They are not willing to get wrecked out for this race, knowing that the double points is on the line. So realistically, if you make some moves that scare them a little bit, they may be more inclined to back out. With T pitting, that would put him with 32 laps to make it. It is tight, but he could do it.
It's right on the mark, but that's with no draft.
Yeah, but he's running in single car, which that really only gets you about 28 laps, so it may be a splash and go. He probably will be hoping for a pit stop by the end of it, or a caution by the end of this.
Yeah, right now, based off of what I'm seeing, he's hoping for a caution within the next 5 to 7 laps, because I think that's about the amount of time it would take for the race leaders to reel him in. There you saw him just now merging back onto the racetrack on the backstretch. He cannot afford to go a lap down, or else the strategy he's playing out right now is not going to work in his favor. But up here at the front, he may get that yellow flag because, man, these guys are back and forth jostling for position. There's not a whole lot of room being given here. Henry Bennett trying to keep Forsythe at bay. Forsythe down to the inside now.
If you think there's not a lot of room given right now, wait till Teed gets caught, where Teed is going to have to basically clog. He's going to have to make that car 3 lanes wide to keep them behind him. Because that is what it will take for him to really come out well on this strategy.
Right now, we've got 8 drivers up in this lead pack, from race leader Forsythe back to the 8th place running Alex Coates. We've got drivers up here that have led laps, a number of them here today. We've got drivers in this top 8 that haven't led a single lap here today. Coates, I don't think, has led a lap yet, and he is in the conversation for this thing. To be honest, right now, I'd want to be where Alex Coates is. I want everything in this lead pack ahead of me, so that way if something happens, I'm able to make a move to avoid it. Because I feel like if you're up here in the 3rd, 4th, 5th position, you're in the eye of the storm. You could get swept up in it and have no say.
That's the thing, where nowhere's really safe. Where here's the thing: if you play the safe route and you hang back, you have the potential to possibly lead or lose this lead pack at the end of the race. And hey, if it does end up going green to the end, I'm in a really bad position. I can't make a last lap charge. But hey, if you hang up here and possibly get caught in this giant wreck, well, that's either a fast repair or hey, my fast repair is already gone. I'm done.
Fuel window would technically be open now for drivers to make it the rest of the way, but none of our race leaders appear that they are heading to pit road anytime soon, as Forsythe ducks back down to the inside of Henry Bennett. Nick Degroot looked to take advantage, not able to do so. Tucks in 3rd still. Ravon there in 4th. Yari Brewpocker in that 5th position, and now Bennett back to the inside of Craig Forsythe for the top spot. Where do you want to be in terms of coming to pit road? Let's say that all these drivers elect to stretch it as far as they possibly can. Do you want to be that lead car, basically determine the lap that you want to come down, have everybody plan their strategy accordingly, or do you want to be back there around 3rd, 4th, see what everybody else ahead of you is doing, maybe see if you can leapfrog them with a short pit strategy?
I mean, regardless, everyone in this field, as soon as they make their pit stop, they will be able to make to the end. It's not a question anymore of can I make it, it's when do I finally throw my hat in the ring, and if I throw my hat in the ring, is a caution going to come out? Because if a caution comes out, I'm in a really bad spot. But hey, if a caution doesn't come out, hey, I could really turn out in the advantage here. If I think of another car, I can try and just hot lap it for the rest of the time. It's not a comforting thought, and it's not a comforting decision.
Obviously, in the Charles Teed situation, I was speculating in terms of a yellow flag coming out between now and the finish. But if you kind of think about it as well, if we go green from here to the checkers, he's about to get swallowed up by the lead pack, where he was running at the time that he ducked onto pit road. So if he's able to merge with these guys, when they eventually come to pit lane, there's every chance Charles Teed could still be up in the lead pack in the final 5 laps of this race.
In theory, yes. However, Charles Teed is at a little bit of a fuel disadvantage. Because right now, he needs to effectively make it about 32, 33 laps on this tank of fuel, and he's had no draft the entire time. And we've had it reported that single car fuel runs are about 28 laps maximum. So it's going to be sketchy.
So if you're T, do you maybe drop back here behind AJ Hobson, be the last car in this lead pack?
But if he drops back, he ends up ruining his strategy where he will need to get the free pass, and it will put him at the back of the field. Like I said, it's kind of one of those rock and a hard place where there's no good solution. So right now, it looks like he's trying to put his money in the I hope for a caution.
It's like, too, he's basically saying to the race leaders, if you're going to pass me, you're going to have to pass me on the top side. Well, he left the door open down low, though. Bennett's going to get there, and it looks like he will lap Charles T by the time they get into turn number 1, but it looked like he was trying to make things a little bit difficult for the race leaders to get around him, and he's going to make it difficult again. Back down to the inside to try and get his lap back.
You know, seeing that green car makes me think of a lawnmower. I just kind of hear the, hey, watch this in the back of my head. Oh, they're 4 wide.
Oh my gosh, yes they are. Nick Degroot with the momentum to the inside of Rayvon, to the inside of T, to the inside of Bennett. They all made it work. And it's going to be Nick Degroot maybe emerging with the race lead off of turn 4. Rayvon says not so fast on driver's right. We got a driver hitting pit road. That's Yari Brewpocker, the 49.
I realistically think that Degroot he saw what was happening in front of him and just said, I didn't want to be any part of this.
We saw right there, though, on that inside of Rick Rayvon, got tight, almost pushed up into that left rear tire of Rick Rayvon. So keep an eye on that. These drivers are about 20 laps into a run. That right front tire heat definitely building up, so that inside line through the corners, not necessarily a viable option.
Just looking here. So these drivers up front, they will need to pit within probably the next 10 to, I'd say, 12 laps. I'd say probably 8 to 12 is a more accurate representation of how hard they've been racing. But within 8 to 12 laps, we'll see much of the top front of the field come down pit road. I'd say up to probably the top 14. So it looks like that is currently our cut. So past that, do you pit now and try to take the advantage, or do you wait for as long as possible and then try to pit?
Well, we ended up, as mentioned, having Yari Brewpocker come down pit road. Matt Wagner joined him as well. And remember, Matt Wagner won this event 2 seasons ago, so we'll see how the strategy plays out for him. Also had another driver on pit road just moments ago. That was Jack Walls in the 83. So we've got a couple of drivers trying the short pit strategy. We'll see if it plays out for them in their favor in the long run.
See, this is where you kind of get in that part of the race where your anticipation's up, your kind of fight or flight is maximum, and you want this race to end, but you know that it's going to be a little bit more difficult.
Not certain what exactly happened with Yari Brewpocker. It looks like he was a little bit slower on his pit stop, but he got leapfrogged by Matt Wagner. Right now, Wagner is running.
To be honest, it looks like really the big difference was pit lane. Really, the pit lane entry and pit lane exit, where it looks like it took Yari Brewpocker about an extra 2 seconds to get on and off pit road. And again, 2 seconds doesn't seem like much, but on the racetrack, that is a huge amount.
Yeah, and he's only 2 seconds now ahead of the race leaders, whereas Matt Wagner is about 3.5 seconds ahead of the race leaders. Both drivers at this point in time still on the lead lap. More drivers down pit road. Gary Corley was on pit lane this last lap, along with Joe McAdory. So you mentioned it,
Yeah.
the net's wide for drivers to be able to choose when they want to come to pit road from here on out.
You know, I feel the reason that much of these drivers up here in the top 5 have not pitted is realistic because how hard they are racing. I think they're just waiting for a caution at this point because they're pretty confident that they'll get one. But right now, I think Charles Teed might be in one of the best positions here at the moment.
Have to see, of course, still has that big question mark with fuel. He is currently also running behind Matt Wagner and Yari Brewpocker. So if this thing did run green to the finish, I don't think he would have enough speed to get up there in the vicinity of those two to battle potentially for the race win, if indeed it would come down to those three. But I still feel as Henry Bennett now dives onto pit lane, I still feel that these guys up here inside of the top 5, regardless of when they decide to come to pit lane, they're still going to be in the conversation in the closing stages.
You know, I think if everyone in front of Charles Teed's pits and there's a caution that comes out and he's on a lead lap, I don't even know if I'd come down for fuel. I think I would just coast the entire way under pacing. and then just try and take the lead off of everyone else.
Yeah, but right now, he would not be the race leader if we were to have that kind of a scenario. Matt Wagner actually would be.
It's a fun scenario.
It's constantly moving chess pieces at over
Looks like
200 miles per hour.
Degroot and AJ Hobson both come down, which is a bit surprising that Henry Bennett didn't come down with them.
Bennett came down the lap before. Schaus is in this lap. Alec Coates is also in. The Rick Ravon, Craig Forsythe, they'll stay out an extra lap. James Watson also out there an extra lap, along with Jeff Hysong. Let's see here about Rick Ravon and Craig Forsythe. Do they come down on the same lap together? Do they split up when they come to pit road? I mean, you know, the enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of scenario maybe for these guys. They've been racing each other hard all day long, but they might need each other for drafting. That answers the question. Forsythe to pit road, Ravon stayed out.
See, that's the big thing where is looking at it where this is a time where teammates can actually hurt you more than help you. Because at this point, it's kind of, we stop playing those team games. We really kind of need to focus on yourself because we don't know what's going to happen. We're all in it for ourselves at this point.
Henry Bennett got around Nick Degroot. Hobson is ahead of Bennett, so right now, Bennett just actually made the pass on Hobson, so right now, Bennett would be in the catbird seat of emerging as the race leader. Ravon stays out an extra lap here. Now obviously the strategy for Rick Ravon is to have the shortest amount of time on pit lane possible in terms of the fuel he takes on. So is this a driver for absolute certain that is just going to do fuel only, not take on the tires? Because if he makes it to 13 laps to go, we were talking about, you know, the potentiality of only half a tank. You would lose time if you took tires on.
I'm just trying to see who has the best plan here at the moment. Because I don't know who to be confident in. If that makes any sense. I see Craig Forsythe, he had a 6.0 pit stop, which is great. But now I'm questioning if he had enough fuel put in. Because it looks like he had the quickest pit stop out of anyone.
I believe only 2 drivers that have come to pit road have done fuel only. You mentioned Craig Forsythe. Eric Schaus would be the other one. Everybody else that's been to pit road for the Cycle Green Flag pit stops, they've taken tires on.
Listen, I wouldn't even mess around with tires here at the moment. I don't think tires give you a good enough gain. Obviously, I think these guys know something that I don't. But I'm with Forsythe here where I don't think tires are valuable enough.
Well, Rick Ravon's in, closing in on 15 to go.
Oh,
let's follow the one. Let's see. He didn't slide the tires. Let's see if it's a fuel-only pit stop for the one car. Well, they're going to jack the car up.
So I don't agree with taking tires right now, where really time and speed are of the essence.
Dale Brooks is going to inherit the race lead, but he's going to have to pit in the next lap or 2, along with Thaddeus McMurray. And this looks like it could cycle the race lead around either to Rick Ravon or possibly Craig Forsythe, who is right now the leading of the cars up to speed. There you go. He's going to get around Rick Ravon, merging back onto the racetrack. So let's rewind back to the first half of this race. It's deja vu all over again. Forsythe versus Rick Ravon, but they have Henry Bennett and AJ Hobson right there as well. So it looks like it's going to be a 3-car battle. And what happened to the 89 of Nick Degroot? Because all of a sudden, he is cycled all the way back in the 14th position.
So I believe Degroot had some connection issues, and that obviously forced him way back in the field, but that really, really hurt him.
That's huge, because in terms of the battle for the championship, Craig Forsythe right now running in second, potentially in the hunt to win this thing for the second time in his career, would take a big chunk in a double points race out of Nick Degroot's points lead. So, oh goodness, I'll try working the calculator here, see what the points gap potentially could be as we close in on 10 laps remaining in this race.
Honestly, I'm really liking Craig Forsythe's call here. I think it's a really good plan. I really like this.
Craig Forsythe tucking back in line behind Rick Ravon, maybe just, content to ride for the moment and then try and make a move on the final lap. I'll tell you, if I wanted to be leader or second place driver on the final lap of a race, especially like this one, I want to be that second place car. I want to be the one to determine the move rather than have to be the one to defend the move. Talk about making a move. AJ Hobson says, hello, boys. I'm here, and he's brought Henry Bennett. Let's go 3 wide to turn 1.
I think it's a little bit too early. I think those are kind of like the 2-3 laps to go moves, and you really need to shove it in there. But again, it gets to a certain point where if a caution comes out, this thing is finishing under yellow.
It's a great point as well. It's a question of which flag are we racing to? Maybe the race ending yellow or the white. Craig Forsythe. A little bit of a block there on the run that AJ Hobson had. He goes to the inside instead of Rick Ravon. Put him back to the front. Henry Bennett, you talked about him there. Twice a bridesmaid, never a bride. Still up here in this conversation. Has a shot to be able to go to victory lane. And boy, if these guys keep racing the way they are, they might have no competitors to have to race here within a corner.
Now, Seb, I have to ask, has any driver ever won the Indy 500 from the pole?
Double check that here for you. Nick Degroot, Matt Wagner, and Craig Forsythe. According to what I'm seeing, none of them have won from the pole position.
So, again, Craig Forsythe's going for kind of rare territory here.
Forsythe was really strong in qualifying. Matter of fact, it was really not that much of a contest either. He and Nick Degroot were up there at the top along with Charles Teed.
Forsythe's in the wall.
And that is not good for the 27 as he's going to lose touch with the top 3. No caution comes out.
There is quite a bit of damage on the right side of that 27 car, and you can look at the steering wheel, and the wheel is bent.
That's big in terms of helping out Nick Degroot, because now, if Forsythe's able to hang on to what is the 5th position after losing the spot to Matt Wagner.
Oh, he's hitting.
Oh, boy. Well, we talked about the fact that Indianapolis, the last 3 seasons, it has determined our champion with being the season finale. It's not the season finale this year, but it certainly could determine the champion. And now with him currently scored behind Nick Degroot, that could ice it for Degroot to win the championship here this week, regardless of what happens next week at Iowa. But this battle for the race lead, though, with less than 10 to go, I'm amazed these guys haven't hooked each other with the front wings, just the slicing and dicing they're doing. Ravon, Hobson, and Bennett.
And you got to think, that's what Matt Wagner wants. Matt Wagner would love nothing more than seeing all 3 of these guys just crash into turn 1 and him just come pacing on by.
These are 3 guys that fit into that criteria of nothing really to lose. Ravon, part-time schedule. Bennett, a one-off driver here this season. AJ Hobson, not in the conversation for the championship in a long time.
Caution.
Oh! Gale Brooks. Might have been Gale Brooks and Jason Hand, potentially.
No, I believe that it was out of turn 1 and 2, really in the middle of turn 1 and 2. Looks like just got the rear end light. Maybe it was a little bit of a reaction to Charles Teed. I just lost the back end and it just lawn darted into the front or inside wall.
And that looks like it's going to be the end of the day for Gale Brooks, who had already taken on his faster pair very early on in this race.
So here comes a big question. Are we going to get a restart?
I believe we are. I think we're going to. If we had been closer to lap 200, I don't think we'd have gone back green. I think we've got a shot at maybe a green-white checkered, maybe a one-lap shootout.
A one-lap shootout. I'm already going to call it someone's getting turned on the one-lap shootout.
Look again. Boy, that was into the steel Armco barrier. Gale Brooks rips the front end of that 71 completely off, and Dale Brooks will not reach the conclusion of this race. Now, I think it's pretty obvious. None of our race leaders are going to come down pit road. We all know that they're going to make it on fuel. The big concern I have now is the tire difference. How important would that be? Because Rick Ravon has got the freshest tires of anybody up here inside of the top 5. Oh, wait a minute.
Ooh.
Ooh, little cat and mouse going on there.
Anything to get an advantage.
Boy, I thought for a moment they might all be coming down pit lane.
I think that was what Ravon was really afraid of. Is that, oh, I may be the only guy out here. This is not going to be a good idea.
So that would have been the big question there about the fresher tires. I mean, Ravon right now has 5 lap fresher tires than Bennett, 6 lap fresher tires than Hobson, 11 lap fresher tires than Matt Wagner's. So, in terms of grip, in terms of tire rubber, he's got the advantage. What are some of the places where he could go wrong here on this upcoming restart and possibly lose this race lead, lose this win?
Really just mirror driving in my mind. Really just focus on yourself, focus on your race. Obviously, keep an eye to the guys behind you, but keep an eye forward. Listen, run your line. Don't focus on them. And as long as you don't focus on them, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't get this win.
This makes things interesting as far as the championship battle as well, because just prior to this caution, I was going to mention the fact that we haven't talked a whole lot about Matt Wagner, but he's only 176 points behind Nick Degroot coming into this race. He was up inside of the top 5 with Degroot just in the latter half of the top 10 and Forsythe having to make that unscheduled pit stop. So there was an opportunity for him to be able to gain enough points to maybe have a shot at the championship next week. This caution now changes up everything because Wagner restarts 4th. Degroot's now up still in the lead pack again on the lead lap in 8th. And that caution keeps Craig Forsythe still on the lead lap in the 14th position. He took on his faster pair on that pit stop. So I know that we're going to be getting this restart with 3, 2, even maybe just 1 lap to go. But a lot can happen in those final laps.
You know what this is called?
This is called, we're glad we're up in the booth and not down the race car.
Called, I'm going to send it. I'm going to send it and I'm going to hope it sticks.
This is never lift point, right?
It is full send territory at the moment.
Well, Rick Ravon, last year's champion, looking to add a Dark Horse 500 trophy to his resume. Henry Bennett, we've mentioned it, twice runner-up in the last 2 years in this event, looking to finally capture that elusive checkered flag. And AJ Hobson, you know, if you're going to give a shout-out to a consistent driver today, probably have to look no further than the 63. The pit strategy worked out 10 laps into this race to gain the track position. He has maintained it ever since. He's got a shot to go to victory lane. I can't remember the last time that Hobson went to victory lane. I think it was back in season 1.
So this is going to be an interesting 2 laps, 3 laps. I don't know what's going to happen. I honestly don't know if he's going to. I don't even know if Rick Ravon's going to even be in the top 5 after this.
It's going to be 7.5 miles to decide this thing. Potentially, there is always the chance that somewhere in these final 3 laps, the caution could come out once again. I remind everybody as well that it is frozen field, so we could end up having a photo finish for the win, but not necessarily at the start-finish line, but at the timing of when the yellow flag is waved. So bear that in mind as well with the side-by-side battling we're going to see here in the closing stages.
I'm just trying to figure out how Charles Teed and Craig Forsythe are somehow going to come from 14th and 10th 14th and 16th respectively, somehow finish in the top 5. I'm ready.
Pace car makes the left-hand turn onto pit road. Look at there, the race leader going to go on the inside line, make sure nobody makes a move on him, tries to get as low to the wall as he can. Green flag flies. Hobson.
Look at Hobson.
Up. What a launch. And he's going to get alongside of Rick Ravon. If you're Rick Ravon, you are hugging that white line through the corners. Force them the longer way around the racetrack.
And it's just a whole stack up behind him, 3-4 wide.
at this. Rick Ravon down to the white line. Here comes the slingshot to the top for Hobson. Bennett tried to go low. Was there a lane? Not quite. Almost made it work.
That's where you get into kind of dangerous territory where, again, I don't know how Henry Bennett feels about last season, but he had some words on Ravon last season a lot.
Oh my goodness, look at the block there down the end. Like, oh, big hit! That's Nick Degroot flying through the infield. No caution as it was off the racing surface. 2 to go. Hobson back to the top again.
And Hobson's trying. Obviously, he's gotten that call in his ear, but someone's wrecking, so he needs to go.
Will they make it back to the white flag as they continue to snake their way down the back straightaway? Now Bennett up top, 3 wide. Middle for Hobson. Oh, I think that Jeff Heisong wanted to go 4 wide, but there wasn't a lane. Tight through 3 and 4 as I saw some smoke back there. Someone's wrecking. Caution is out. Race is over. Rick Ravon was ahead by, I believe, half a car length over AJ Hobson. He's going to win the race under yellow. Gary Corley and Charles Teed, I believe, were the 2 that were wrecking over in turn 3 to bring this race to an exciting conclusion. And Rick Ravon, who won the championship last season but wanted to get that Dark Horse 500 victory, is going to get it here today, but it will be under pacing behind the pace car.
That's it. I don't know if those top 3 are the best friends of each other at the moment.
I'll tell you what, they put on a heck of a show before the caution came out and put on even more of a show on that final restart. And the fact that all 3 of them are still pointed the right direction, I think, just kind of is a true testament to how hard they race, but had the respect there to not take each other out.
I mean, you saw it entering 3 that AJ Hobson and Rick Ravon, they were just beating the sides off of it. And I was really worried for Bennett there for a minute that Bennett was going to get taken out.
Had a lot of stuff to cover here as far as replays in the closing stages. We'll look at the Nick Degroot wreck off of turn 4, which could still have some ramifications as far as that championship next week, with him finishing, looks like, in the 18th position.
I will say, I would love nothing more in this series than a green-white checkered system. Just seeing these guys go at it one more time and seeing who can come out.
You might be the only person in Indianapolis that wants a green-white checkered. But Rick Ravon, you saw him cross the line, the checkered flag over the nose of the championship #1 machine. And he's going to be able to come around and celebrate at the Yard of Bricks. His 3rd win on the season as well in a limited number of starts, and it's a big one here today at Indianapolis as he makes his way around back to the start-finish line. Let's take a look at some of the stuff that happened there in the closing stages. Now, this one did not bring out the caution. Nick Degroot, that car went airborne and actually, I believe, went actually into the infield. So look out, pedestrians.
I don't even know where to begin.
I don't think I've ever seen a car get airborne and shoot into the infield like that. That was heart-stopping. Watch this. Little gap whack coming into play there, it looked like.
I mean, he got to the garage area.
He did. He definitely got to the garage area. Not exactly the way you're supposed to. I think he took the
I mean, I almost gave the fans the splash zone, actually.
What do they call it at the theme parks? The fast pass?
But I mean, I guess that definitely has some ramifications. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like Craig Forsythe was really able to capitalize as well as he could. But hey, having something is better than nothing.
That was Yari Brewpocker that I think the gap whack took place with. Either it was gap whack or it was a reactionary turn to the left by Nick Degroot. It was one or the other. Obviously, Degroot getting the worst end of that. And then here's what ended up bringing out the caution. It looks harmless when you come off of turn number 2. Double wide, 2 rows deep. Watch how quickly, with Forsythe jumping top and Schaus jumping bottom, it goes to 4 wide going into turn 3. And Gary Corley getting some help from the 72 up the racetrack, and nowhere for Charles Teed to be able to go.
it's kind of one of those things where you're sad to see it end that way, but it could have been 10 times worse, and we don't want all the leaders wrecking each other.
And at the same time, too, it's the closing stage of the race. As you said, it's time to go. You hold that throttle wide open. Whatever happens, happens. That's what the drivers are obligated to do. You're in a position to pick up a spot or two by the conclusion, especially the drivers that are trying to finish out the season as high as they can in the point standings. You have an obligation to go out there and get as many spots as you can before the conclusion of this race. Rick Ravon parks it at the Yard of Bricks, continuing to celebrate on the front straightaway. Let's take a look at the finishing results from this one. And there's a lot of different storylines here today. A long race, 200 laps in total. Ravon starting this race from outside of the top 10. Started 11th, bringing it home with the victory. AJ Hobson is, I believe, going to get the 5 bonus points for most spots gained from his starting position. So double that to 10 points. Started 20th and brings it home runner-up. Henry Bennett, 3rd straight year that he finishes inside of the podium, 2 seconds and now a 3rd place. So the motivation, the frustration, whatever it is, it's obviously going to be amped up even more in next year's Dark Horse 500. Jeff Hysong, I don't think we talked a whole lot about him today. Solid run in the 4th position. And Matt Wagner, I don't know yet. We got to obviously wait until all the points are calculated. But what do you think? An 18th place finish for Nick Degroot, a 5th place finish for Wagner. Wagner might still have a mathematical shot for that championship next week at Iowa.
Iowa's going to bring a lot of things light, but I'm not sure how great of a chance Forsythe will have at Iowa. I think we just have to wait till the points get added, and then obviously the double points get added, and see what happens.
Alec Coates, great run there for the one-off driver. He will bring it home in 6th. James Watson started the race from pit road, had that unscheduled stop under pacing, and he's going to bring it home in 7th. Eric Schaus, talk about a fighter. He was a lap down for the first half of this race, took a wave around, got a timely caution, stayed on the lead lap, and brings it home in 8th. Yari Brewpocker there in 9th after he had some early issues. And Craig Forsythe, involved there in that incident late, had to be back in the field, fought his way up for a top 10 run. We'll have to wait and see just where exactly this positions him for the season finale next week. On down from 11th place. Good runs by some of these guys making their debuts in the series. Jack Walls, he was a lap down a couple of times, got a couple free passes. 11th for him. Sebastian Kinder in 12th. Joe McAdory returning back, 13th. Thaddeus McMurray and Charles Teed completing out the top 15. Gary Corley was the last driver to make it back to the start-finish line on the lead lap. Then Mike Gibson, 17th. Nick Degroot, 18th place here today after spending the majority of the race up inside of the top 5. Had the internet problems near the end of this race. Involved in that wreck that didn't bring out a caution. Finishes 1 lap down. We'll have to wait and see if 18th is enough to be able to keep the rest of the competition at bay en route to his 2nd championship of his Dark Horse Racing Series career. And there you see the rest of the finishing results. Eric Peterson, Ryan Mullis, Jim Herrick, Gail Brooks, and Justin Newcombe did not reach the conclusion of this race. They all finished back in the garage area. Well, definitely a lot of different storylines here today. Wondering about what the thoughts are of these top 3. As you mentioned, didn't seem to you that these guys were really fans of each other. We'll see if we can get some thoughts from them here. As let's kick things off with the guy that brings it home 3rd place here today. Let's see if we can talk with Henry Bennett. Hey Henry, it's Matt and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
I hear you.
And a hard-fought race for you here today. Strong race car up inside the top 5, really the top 3 all day long. We knew that this race was going to be crazy at the end. Little did we know it was going to be a 3-lap shootout. You and Ravon and Hobson mixing it up even before then. I mean, describe that from the cockpit of the 007.
Yeah, it's pretty intense at the end there. Even before the caution, we were racing pretty hard, and we knew we had to get near the front in the top 3 in case there were any separations in the group. in order to have a chance of the win. It's so hard once you've got a gap of like a second or more. It's so hard to make that gap up with the way the draft works here. So, yeah, at the end, we knew the first caution after the restart would end the race. So it was a matter of trying to get your nose ahead. But it's smart of Rick to wait to restart the race right to the last moment. So there's less opportunities to get a draft behind him on the restart, and more opportunity of chaos behind. Most people would do similar, but it does make it more difficult for everyone behind. AJ got a start and was alongside Rick before turn 1, which is interesting. And yeah, then with the two of them dominating the bottom lines, it was very difficult it would have been very difficult, even if it ran to the end, to get a nose in there to compete for the win. So yeah, hats off to everyone in the race. It was a relatively clean race, loads of close fighting. Hats off to guys like Nick and Craig who put on a great show all race, racing really clean and competitively. And yeah, hats off to Rick for winning one of these. I'm a little bit jealous of the prize he's going to get.
Let me follow up that statement, because obviously there's a little bit of sting that comes with that. I mean, you finished bridesmaid a couple of times, finished third again. I mean, I think even Seth said it multiple years in a row, but you finished in the top 3. You've been here every time, but man, when are you going to get that win?
I mean, there's no guarantees that you can go. You could race here every time and be in the contention, and things just don't fall your way. But the main thing is just to be in contention at the end of the race. You can't make any other prediction. You can't aim for anything more than that. So yeah, luck really does have to fall your way to get that win. You can do everything you can, like the tactics and the restarts and using traffic, pit stops, everything like that. But there's luck involved, and you can't guarantee the luck's ever going to go your way. So maybe one day.
Being in the conversation for the victory is something you've been consistently able to do for the past 3 seasons, Henry. Another solid outing for you here today. Congratulations on the podium run. And now we'll give you the opportunity to do thank yous and shout outs to the people and sponsors that got you here.
Massive thanks to factory-backed motorsports. Haven't driven with them since I left the series at the end of last season, and yeah, really happy to be back with them. Running with Nick or Race was a lot of fun, and working strategy and tactics really well together. So yeah, big thanks to them.
That's Henry Bennett. He's your 3rd place finisher here this season of the Dark Horse 500. Congratulations once again, Henry, and maybe next year when this event is run again, we'll be talking to you in Victory Lane.
Thanks, guys.
All right, let's see if we can get our runner-up finisher, AJ Hobson. AJ, Matt and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Yes, sir.
Oh, man, I'll tell you what. How about that? Best finish of the season for you here in the big one, the Dark Horse 500. Got a heck of a restart there. Was able to get alongside the race leader going into turn number 1, timing it perfectly. I mean, what little more do you need to be able to get him? And if you'd had that extra lap under green flag conditions, did you have a pass set up?
Yeah, I think if I was, able to keep him pinched down in the corners, maybe just another lap, like you said, I might have had, enough drive off the corner to just squeeze by on the top. It's just so hard to get past that car on the bottom lane, on the first few starts or the first few laps of the restart. And unfortunately, we were close, but we didn't get the job done.
Let me go ahead and head back to that last lap. So did you ever get any indication that a caution was coming out there at the end? Because I noticed you guys were basically just banging off each other. I was like, did he get the call that someone's wrecking in the back?
I mean, my plan was to do whatever it takes to get the lead within these last 3 laps, because if there is a yellow, I mean, it's going to end under yellow. And I was racing as hard as I could, doing anything I could to try to get the lead, and the yellow just happened to come out at the wrong time. So yeah, I don't know. It's it's tough in those last few laps to, you think you have a plan and then you get there and it's just kind of like everything's out the window and you just kind of go, where the open track is and hope that's the best line. And we did. We went into 3 wide, kind of banging wheels there right before the yellow. And I honestly kind of thought Rick was going to like lose it up and into me and I was going to go up into Henry, but we made it through. Just unfortunately, we didn't get to see that last lap of Green Flag Racing. I think it would have been a pretty crazy finish.
You talk about the unpredictability of timing when the cautions are going to fall, if they fall. We ended up seeing you start this race pretty deep in the field. You played pit strategy in the early stages, got yourself good track position, and was able to maintain it. But, in between the strategy with green flag pit stops, of course, the passes for position on the racetrack itself, timing those cautions, the late race yellows. Just how difficult, how grueling is it mentally for a driver to have to keep track of all of that stuff and do it for 200 laps?
Yeah, it's pretty difficult, but fortunately for me, I've done a lot of these. I've tried a bunch of different strategies. I've led a lot of laps. I've tried saving fuel, and today I made the decision to go off strategy fairly early in the race just to take the track position because I crashed in qualifying and it was working out. We had the lead there for a while, a good amount of time. I'm not really sure how many laps I led, but I led quite a few laps and the strategy worked. It played into our favor towards the end of the race with the way the yellows fell, and I was just glad to get a shot to win.
Well, you've certainly had some great momentum in the last few starts that you've made. This now marks your 4th straight top 10, your 2nd top 5 in the last 4 races. So congratulations on a job well done here today. Almost pulled off that victory, but solid outing overall this entire race for you. Now we're going to give it the opportunity for some thank you sponsors and shout outs.
I'd just, like to thank, Charles, Peterson, Schaus, Gary. We're in the Discord discussing strategy every race, and our goal is always to try to get one person from the team up there on in victory lane. And, with Eric crashing out there in the race, kind of helped me with some strategy there towards the end, but unfortunately we weren't able to get it done. But really, yeah, just thanks to them. It's always fun to race with them.
Well, that's AJ Hobson. He's your 2nd place finisher here today in the Dark Horse 500. Congratulations on a job well done here today, AJ, and best of luck next week in season finale.
Yep, thank you guys.
All right, let's go down to Victory Lane, which at this point in time is the start-finish line, the Yard of Bricks. Let's see if we can talk with our race winner, Rick Raybon.
Yep.
Hey, Rick, it's Matt and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Oh, yeah, I got you, Matt and Seth. What's going on, guys? Did you enjoy that one?
Absolutely, man. I'll tell you what, I remember last year when we interviewed you as the champion of the Dark Horse Racing Series, you said, man, I love it, the fact that I got the championship trophy, but I wish I'd been able to close it out with the double and get the Dark Horse 500 trophy as well. You had to wait 1 season, but man, how good does it feel to be able to win this big one?
Oh, it feels, it's phenomenal. What can I tell you? This is the Indianapolis 500, and against a field of quality drivers, such talent out there with Hobson and Bennett and Highsong, Wagner, Degroot, all of these guys, Craig Forsythe, they were just, oh my gosh. And the cars were so close together because the downforce, the grip was just fantastic. So you really couldn't run away from anybody. So you had to sort of play a different strategy, swap in with somebody and things like that. But yeah, after last year's disappointment, I think I was, what happened? I was outside with, I think it was Alex Van de Sant, and I turned in. I thought I gave him enough room, but we touched, and yeah, that was a heartbreaker right there. But to come back and run a part-time schedule with these guys and come away with a victory at Indianapolis, I'm beside myself. I don't know what to say. I just, wow, woohoo! By the way, I got a glass of milk right here. I'm going to do this live on the air. I got a glass of milk. Here we go.
I've never been so scared.
I'm going to pour it on my head. Here we go.
Please don't.
No, I'm only kidding. I'm not going to. I will dip my finger in it and touch the top of my head just to keep with tradition. That's all I'm going to do, though.
I'd honestly hate for you to smell curdled milk in your office.
You and me both.
Yeah. So I got to ask, championship, Indy 500, what's left?
Nothing. Really? No, no, just to keep racing with these guys and just keep having fun, it's such a competitive league. I know that Nick Degroot, probably the classiest guy on the racetrack, the way he races, on the track, off the track. He's got the points lead right now, but it's obviously not. I don't think it's over yet. But I'm enjoying just racing with these guys. I'm having a great time. I'm just so glad the Dark Horse exists because they do such a great job with this league. They run it professionally, and I'm loving it, man. I'm just having a great time with these guys.
Let's talk about that final restart. I mean, obviously, we're thinking that we were maybe going to see about a shootout to the end with drivers making some pit stops on different laps, waiting to see how that was all going to cycle out. We get that late race caution. We're trying to calculate how many laps are going to be left to go. It ends up being 3 laps, and we don't know if we're going to get those 3 laps under green flag conditions or if a caution is going to come out between then and the checkered flag. We even saw some deking with some potential pit road jukes onto the pit lane. I mean, obviously, got to be nervous as the race leader, knowing just what kind of runs these cars can generate. So what was the strategy for that final 7.5 miles?
Well, it was exactly like Henry Bennett said. It was wait until the green flag came out and then just jump on it. I didn't want to risk anybody getting a monster run on me in the backstretch and clearing me in turn 3 because then it would have been extremely difficult because you would have, like a swarm of bees, you would have had these guys all over the place, and to pull off a win after getting past on that restart, the initial restart, the final restart, would have been very difficult. So the plan was just to wait until it said, green, go, go, go. And that's when I nailed it, just so that nobody could really get a run on me. And it paid off. I mean, Hobson started coming around, and I says, holy cow, what a run he got on Bennett. Cleared Bennett, and he pulled alongside me, but I knew I had the inside line. And the idea was just to hold the inside line. And, I'm thinking, maybe something will get crazy back there. And if I'm in front when the yellow comes out, yippee, we win the race. So that was really the plan there for the last. But, a couple of pit stops before that, I didn't know if I was going to be able to make it to the end, but I was pretty sure that guys like Degroot and Forsythe and Bennett, they were going to make it. So we just dialed it back and started conserving like crazy, just hoping to get back even with them, if nothing else. That's why we're sitting back there in 3rd or 4th, wherever we were. But then that next caution came out, and it was a sigh of relief because then I knew, okay, now there's no more fuel save, and now we can actually race. We don't have to worry about that anymore. And then we just went out there and had some more fun. I mean, what a race! Just phenomenal. Such a great race. Such a great race.
Obviously, as you mentioned, coming back here on a part-time schedule, but what a part-time schedule. 3 victories and 5 starts here this season. You had the back-to-backs at Richmond and Michigan. You follow it up here with a win in the Dark Horse 500. I mean, congratulations on a job well done. Now you, along with Nick Degroot, the only drivers to have a championship and an Indy 500 to your credit in this series. So congratulations on that. And, man, now you know what we're going to do. We're going to hand that mic over to you for some Victory Lane thank you sponsors and shout-outs.
And here we go. Eric Peterson, Charles Teed, thank you guys so much for Dark Horse. And FRN, I want to thank you guys up in the booth. Seth and Matt, you guys do a great job. I kind of do miss Scott Rankin. I wish that he was here to see this. That's my boy. And I just want to thank the drivers out there, the top 5, Hobson, Bennett, Heisong, Wagner. Just a great job. The racing was just so close because the cars are stuck like glue, but I think, what do we have? I think maybe 3 cautions before the end of the race. I mean, that was just fantastic for a 500 miler. Just phenomenal. Just phenomenal. All the drivers, I just want to thank them for coming out and thank my family, my wife. She's out on the road, so she missed this one and pretty upset about that. Why couldn't you you could have stuck around and watched this was a scintillating race, honey. You could have been here, but no, got to go shopping, got to go spending money, of course. Anyway, thank my 2 daughters, Zoe and Mila. Mila's at work. I don't know where Zoe is, but they have links. So I didn't check my phone yet to see if there's any congratulations, but thanks to them. And, of course, like I always do, last but certainly not least, thank the Lord Jesus. I love you so much, Lord Jesus. You're everything to me. You're number 1 in my life. And thank you for just everything, dying for me on the cross. And I love you, Jesus. I love you. And I guess that's about it. Hey, I'm looking around. Thanks to the crowd for coming out here. Oh, big cheer. Hey, look at this. Thanks to the crowd for coming out. Thanks to the people who tune in and watch. Man, I guess that's just about it. Looking forward to the next Dark Horse race.
Well, your Season 5 Dark Horse 500 winner is Rick Ravon. The number 1 finishes P1 here today in Indianapolis. Congratulations, Rick. Well-deserved, and looking forward to seeing how you close out the season next week at Iowa.
Yes, thank you so much. God bless you guys. Thank you.
Well, it's been a long one here today at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It finally comes to a conclusion. The season does not come to a conclusion, however, as next week the championship will be decided at Iowa. But I have been crunching the numbers a little bit here. Based off of what I've been able to come up with, not counting any bonus points here today, Matt Wagner's going to gain 36 points. This is with the double points also coming into play. 36 points he will gain on Nick Degroot, and Craig Forsythe will only gain 16 points. According to what I've got here, Matt, it looks like mathematically Nick Degroot has locked up the Season 5 championship here today at the Brickyard. I think maybe giving him one math problem too many has broken him. But it's looking like Nick Degroot
my apologies. But no, obviously we could obviously tell that that instant with Craig Forsythe late in the race, where he easily lost out in a potential top 4 finish, where it was almost handed to him with a top 4 finish, that hurt him immensely, and it's not too surprising to see that again. Unfortunately, it just isn't going to come to be.
Obviously, we talked about drivers here today doing the one-offs or drivers that aren't in the hunt for the championship, treating this race as I'm going out there, I'm going to make the moves necessary to get a checkered flag. If the championship's already decided now, what kind of mentality is the entire field going into Iowa with as the season finale?
I'll send it.
Well, it's going to be a good one to see what happens when we get to Iowa Speedway. For those wondering, Iowa Speedway was originally supposed to be run the middle portion of the season. It got postponed. It got moved to the end of the season, which is why Indianapolis sets up the season finale at Iowa next week, which we will be bringing you coverage of next Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So make sure that you tune in there to see who gets the final checkered flag of Season 5. But Rick Ravon is your winner here today at Indianapolis. He takes the checkered flag for the race. Nick Degroot has locked up the championship. Matt, it's been a long one. It's been a wild one. It's been an exciting one here today. What a finish. Appreciate you joining the booth for it.
Oh, always a delight. It's always nice coming out on a Sunday morning and seeing these guys race. I mean, they always put on a show, and today was no exception.
And you didn't wreck the pace car, so good on you. It's a very good job not wrecking that paint job.
I'll try.
You get a 0x. How about that? So thanks everybody for tuning in. Hope that you guys enjoyed our coverage this afternoon. And again, we'll see you on Wednesday night to close out the season for the Dark Horse Racing Series presented by Troy Lee Designs. For Matthew Rodriguez, I'm Seth Cole. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday afternoon, folks. You've been watching another broadcast courtesy of the Flatout Racing Network.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of Flatout Racing Network and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Flatout Racing Network and iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations. Flatout Racing Network would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast.